Hey guys, welcome back. This is Snazzy, our all-time favorite. Today we are gonna see what if Goku faced destruction of his planet. So let's move on to the video. Somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy, age 737, Earth year 1984. Within the ever-expansive cosmos, there existed 12 known universes. Some believe that 6 others were also created at the beginning of the current multiverse, but due to the actions of its creators, the one above all, and his son, the Omni King, Zeno, they had long since ceased to be. An explanation for their collective destruction had never truly been ascertained. All that could be said about them was that they became corrupted to the point where total erasure was their only hope for salvation. This applied to many individuals affected by the Mkron crystal and its sudden fracturing by a dark, malevolent entity's hands. Of course, all of these events took place billions upon trillions of years ago. Death and rebirth had always been an endless cycle for any iteration of the present multiverse. Even now, in its 7th version, many cataclysms have brought it upon the cusp of complete unequivocal annihilation. No planets were safe from the world devourer, Galactus, and his fellow cosmic deities, the gods of destruction, in fact. However, what most people didn't realize was that the balance between life and death was necessary for the multiverse's continual longevity. For every god of destruction, there needed to be supreme case and celestials to replace what was previously extinguished. And then, there were angels, led by their father, the Grand Priest, to keep all of those aforementioned parties in check. Each group paled in comparison to the more powerful cosmic deities who served the one above all and the Omni King directly. These abstract entities included the three-headed personification of multiversal law, the living tribunal, eternity, personification of time in the multiverse, his sister infinity, personification of space in the multiverse, oblivion, who represented non-existence. And finally, Mistress Death herself. She, above all else, claimed the lives of anyone and everything, including previous versions of the entire multiverse. With there being an infinite amount of timelines and possibilities for each person, place, or thing, everyone, no matter how powerful or deified, was driven along by the threads of fate. And one planet's unfortunate fate would change the course of the entire multiverse for years to come. It would all begin somewhere in the 7th and most dangerous universe's Milky Way galaxy. This single planet, although originally known as Plant, came to be acknowledged by the new name, Vegeta, after its current ruler and conqueror. This man, King Vegeta III, ruled over a barbarous race of warriors called the Saiyans, who lived to both fight and kill anyone foolish enough to challenge them. Their actions made them fierce enemies of the Kree, Skrull, Shire, and any other intergalactic empire. Although, one empire chose to profit off their fighting abilities and form a partnership with the Saiyans. In exchange for advanced pieces of technology, Saiyan warriors took over planets in the name of Lord Frieza and his Planet Trade Organization. They didn't care what empire these planets were previously affiliated with, even if it would generate wide-scale wars between each known species and their alliances. Frieza was far too confident in his own power and intelligence to recognize the Kree, Skrull, or Shire as his equals. He wouldn't stop until their forces had fallen beneath his feet and begged for mercy. He wouldn't grant any of that nonsense, of course, but it'd still be fun for him to hear. The Arcosian Emperor was currently seated in his mothership, sipping on a glass of wine. He was a rather short being with white skin, black horns, and purple armor that had yellow shoulder pads. A long pink and purple tail was wrapped around his seat as he glared out the window with narrowed red eyes. These eyes glinted with nothing short of pure evil intent. He lightly chuckled as one of the Kree's accuser warships was blown to smithereens by one of his own vessels. It was attempting to invade planet Vegeta, which he found rather comical, given what he was planning to do to it soon. The Saiyans, after all, had become far too dangerous for their own good. There was an actual chance they could overthrow him someday, and he certainly couldn't have something as asinine as that happen. It'd be like a couple of monkeys overthrowing their zookeeper. Ah. How I love a good show. Frieza muttered. As he took another sip from his drink, 2 of his main subordinates entered the room. One was a tall, effeminate man with light blue skin, yellow eyes, and green hair tied down into a braid. The other was a slightly obese alien with purple lips, spikes atop his head, and pink skin. They both bowed down in Frieza's presence as he turned around to address them. Give me a brief update on what's happening out there, Zarbon. Most of the Kree's ships have fled the battlefield, my lord. Captain Marvel managed to destroy a few of our forces, but after a brief skirmish with your brother, Lord Cooler, his current whereabouts are now unknown. The blue-skinned man explained. The Skrulls, however, have evaded our detection thus far. There's no trace of them anywhere. Within the corner of his eye, Frieza could catch the briefest glimpse of a Skrull battleship floating in space. It was incredibly damaged beyond repair, but still somewhat operational, nonetheless. The Arcosian slightly narrowed his eyes. No trace of them, huh? He murmured. Midoriya nodded his head. Yes sir. We'll try to find them as soon we. Frieza quickly raised his finger and fired a red beam straight through Zarbon's heart. He hacked a clump of green blood from his mouth and fell to his knees. Then no. I gave it away too soon. He then died almost instantly, revealing his true green-skinned appearance. He'd had very large elfin ears as well. "You bastard," the Skrull disguised as Dodoria growled in pure hatred. Frieza just held a hand over his mouth and guffawed. "Ahahaha. You really think I wouldn't recognize the energies of my own men? You pitiful Skrulls really are green." He then tapped the green scouter attached to his ear in a mocking way. Having enough of the evil Emperor's insults, the Skrull raised up his muscular pink arms and charged up a yellowish-orange energy sphere. "Erg. Die, Arcosian scum." He then fired a large energy blast, causing Frieza to effortlessly flip over it and wrap his tail around Dodoria's throat. His lips curled into that of a sadistic sneer. "Pray to whatever god you want, but they'll never be able to save you from me, Skrull." Before he could scream in horror, Frieza snapped the Skrull's neck and disposed of his lifeless body like common everyday trash. Disappointing as always. If they really want to kill me, these fools should consider sending far more men than this. The Emperor sighed. As if it would do them any good. In that moment, the real Zarbon and Dodoria appeared. They were covered in the green blood of fallen Skrull soldiers. "Lord Frieza. Skrulls have infiltrated the..." Frieza raised his hand, signaling for him to stop talking. "Yes, I'm already well aware, Zarbon. Now, please dispose of this trash for me, will you?" He looked down at the two corpses and winced. He had always been repulsed by the sight of those green shapeshifters, more so than his own monstrous true form. "Right away, sir." Zarbon blasted each of the Skrulls' bodies with a yellow Kai blast and disintegrated them within seconds. "What now, Lord Frieza?" Dodoria asked. The Arcosian prodigy looked out the window of his ship to analyze the surface of planet Vegeta. It was a red planet orbited by 2 yellow moons. The very sight of it disgusted him in more ways than one. After hearing stories about a supposed legendary Super Saiyan that could shine as bright as the sun itself, Frieza knew that the monkey's days were numbered. It was now time to ensure that none of them would grow powerful enough to stand in his way. "I believe that the Saiyans have long overstayed their welcome to Doria." He scowled. "Prepare my transport. I'll let the primitive apes go out in a blaze of glory. Mine, that is." "Are you certain about this, sire? They may be uncouth barbarians, but the Saiyans have done a lot of good work for the Empire. They could still be a valuable asset." Frieza's purple energy began to surge as he glared back at his commanding officer. "Are you questioning my orders, Zarbon?" Zarbon's eyes widened in fear. "And not at all, Lord Frieza. I'll prepare it right away." "That's what I thought." With that, Zarbon and Dodoria ran off to prepare their leader's personal hoverpod. Frieza, continuing to gaze out the window, smiled evilly from ear to ear. "As long as those troublesome birds don't intervene, you'll be dancing in hell soon enough, monkeys." Ahoho. Outside planet Vegeta's upper atmosphere. Frieza. Blitzing through hundreds upon thousands of Planet Trade Organization soldiers was a low-class Saiyan with black spiky hair named Bardock. He had a prominent scar on his left cheek and wore a red bandana coated with fresh blood. His slightly damaged armor was dark blue with green arm straps and other additional accessories. Red armbands were also wrapped his wrists and knuckles. The blue aura of Kai surrounded his body as he soared across space, fighting off soldier after soldier in quick succession. His anger was reaching its absolute breaking point as he continued his rampage. He powerfully slammed his elbow into one soldier's chin and fired a small energy blast at another. "Frieza. Come out and fight me, you coward." Bardock screamed. He didn't give much of a damn about the many Kree, Skrull, and Shire vessels floating around in space in that moment. All he really cared about was ensuring the survival of himself, his wife, and their youngest son. "I'm sorry for leaving you alone like this, Jine, but I need to face Frieza by myself. To save everyone we know and love, especially Kakarot," he thought determinedly. Piles of Frieza Force lackeys tried to pull him away from their Emperor's spaceship, but none of them proved strong enough to stop him. He just kept blasting them away and continued flying onward. "Get out here. I won't let you get away with this." Bardock floated directly in front of the large, saucer-like ship. Upon reaching that particular location, Frieza finally revealed himself. He was seated in his hoverpod with a bored yet calm look on his face. His legion of followers began to shiver in response to his very presence. They never thought he would actually be bold enough to show himself like this. Lord Frieza. Long live, Lord Frieza. Bardock, on the other hand, snickered. For many days now, he has seen visions of the distant future. Some detailed the destruction of planet Vegeta by Frieza's hands, while others foretold the almost mutant biology that his son would develop. This supposed mutation, according to what he saw, would prove be the key to defeating Frieza many years later. The Arcosian dictator, after all, was said to be a mutant himself. He didn't want to believe it, but after witnessing the death of his closest friends and comrades by Dodoria, Bardock knew that the Saiyan race was close to reaching its end. This is it, Frieza. Now, everything is going to change from here on out. The low-class Saiyan muttered. He outstretched his hand, producing a ball of blue kai from it. Planet Vegeta's fate, my own fate, my son's fate, and even yours. All of it will be decided here. Frieza said nothing in reply. He only raised one of his fingers and generated a tiny orange sphere. This is where your reign of terror will come to an end, bastard. Bardock screamed. He then tossed a blue energy sphere in an attempt to kill Frieza once and for all. Unfortunately, fate had other plans for him. The sphere was instantly engulfed by Frieza's supernova technique as it grew to the size of a small orange sun. And no way. As it grew larger and larger by the second, Frieza broke out into a crazed fit of uncontrollable laughter. Ahaha. Ahahahahaha. He then bent his finger and launched the supernova directly at Planet Vegeta. Much to Frieza's clear lack of concern, the massive orange ball consumed Bardock and many of the Planet Trade Organization's officers whole. Lord Frieza. Why? At that point, Bardock could do nothing else but scream in pain. Ah. He fell victim to the supernova's path of destruction and lost the remainder of his armor. His foresight had proven that he would indeed fail to save his home, people, and family from death. Death, however, would not claim every Saiyan's life that day. Sailing through the cold reaches of space, Bardock caught the briefest glimpse of a lone Saiyan pod. This single pod was launched by him and Jine mere moments before he set off to confront Frieza in battle. It was traveling to a distant planet called Earth. It was then Bardock realized that even in failure, Kakarot's survival was still an achievement from his perspective. His mutant son was a light of hope shining down on this cold, desolate universe. He smiled, seeing one last vision of a much older Kakarot facing Frieza on an unknown green planet. He was wearing a strange orange guy with a small X symbol on the corner of his chest. It's in your hands now, my son. Don't let me, your mother, and the other Saiyans die in vain. He ever so slightly reached out his hand to touch the Saiyan pod before being completely eviscerated by the supernova's flaming interior. Kakarot. With no visible trace of Bardock left, Frieza's supernova crashed into Planet Vegeta and caused its surface to crack apart into multiple tiny pieces. Pillars of fire emerged from the planet's core as it was completely blown to smithereens. The Saiyans were now almost completely extinct and Frieza was loving every moment of it. He gazed upon the fiery explosion in sheer unequivocal delight. Ahahaha. How wonderful. Look at it, Zarbon and Dodoria. Behold such beautiful fireworks. He laughed. Ahahahaha. Zarbon and Dodoria looked out the window in disbelief. They didn't think he'd actually go through with it, yet he did without any hesitation. It served as a good example of what would happen if someone decided to get on Lord Frieza's bad side. They were just relieved to not be part of the Kree, Skrull, or Shire empires. Any enemy of Frieza's was bound to experience a fate worse than death itself, even if, like say Captain Marvel or the Shire Imperial Guard's Gladiator, proved to be fairly powerful in their own right. Somewhere close to Planet Vegeta's former location. The Kree and Skrull empires immediately fled upon seeing Planet Vegeta be destroyed by a single flick of Frieza's finger. They'd need to report this catastrophic event to their leaders pronto. Although both of them civilizations were glad to have the Saiyan nuisances out of their hair, Frieza still posed a significant threat to the planets they considered allies. Sooner or later, he might become just as big of a threat as the Mad Titan and known deviant eternal hybrid, Thanos. They both seemed to have an immense fascination with death as a whole, at least. The Shire Imperial fleet was quick to leave as well, but one small ship stayed behind. It resembled that of a green bug with 2 black eyes and equally numbered sets of antennae. 6 red thrusters were also built into it from top to bottom. Operating this ship were 3 Shire soldiers and their current princess, Lilandra Naramani. She was a young humanoid woman with a head full of black feathers that covered her ears. Her blue eyes contained small black markings that vividly resembled lashes of some sort. She also wore a metallic suit of armor with a long black cape that extended past her back. Her fellow Shire were beginning to panic at the sight of Planet Vegeta's untold destruction. They also had feather-like helmets in place of hair. He just destroyed Planet Vegeta, Your Majesty. It belonged to his own empire, yet he destroyed it just like that. One of them cried. He couldn't take his eyes away from the absolute carnage taking place before him. He's a madman, I tell you. A madman. Lilandra scowled and shook her head. Although her father, Emperor Naramani, wasn't a saint by any means, even he wouldn't go as far as to indiscriminately slaughter his own subjects. He held far too much respect for life to do something like that. How barbaric. And to think that father wanted to form an alliance with this monster. She rested a hand on her cheek, frowning. She couldn't even begin to imagine how many men, women, and children were killed in that explosion. It made the Shire princess absolutely sick to her stomach. No. This Lord Frieza person has proven to be far worse than that. He is nothing short of pure evil incarnate, even when compared to the brutal warriors the Saiyans once were. It fills me with dread thinking what he could do to Chandilar and the rest of our people. Don't think that way, your majesty. Surely Frieza would pale in comparison to Gladiator and other members of the Imperial Guard, correct? Another Shire soldier insisted. Lilandra bit her lower lip in uncertainty. You may be right, but given what we just witnessed, she said while glaring over at the remains of Planet Vegeta, or lack thereof. There's no guarantee that Frieza and his Planet Trade Organization can even be beaten. Not anytime soon, at least. She then spotted something darting across space at faster than average speeds. It appeared to have left the planet before it exploded. Commander, what's that small object flying in the distance? Lilandra asked. I'm not sure, princess. Let's get a closer look. The Shire commander typed some command into their ship's computer and zoomed in. It was a small grey pod surrounded by blue flames. I see. It appears to be a common Frieza Force attack ball. He replied. From within the pod's red glass, he saw a Saiyan toddler sitting inside of it. And it looks like a Saiyan child is operating it. Lilandra's blue eyes slightly widened. She knew that weaker Saiyans were shipped off to different planets upon being born, but she didn't expect one to be launched so soon after Planet Vegeta's recent annihilation. A child. I had a feeling that Prince Vegeta may have survived his people's extinction, but not anyone else. She thought, getting a closer look at the child's monkey tail and other basic characteristics. Judging by his black, spiky hair, this boy is a low-class Saiyan. His chances of survival are much lower than an elite's would be. Should we do something about it, your majesty? A Saiyan child would make a fine addition to the Shire Empire. I'm sure your father and siblings would agree. The youngest child of Emperor Naramani paused for a moment. Given how brutally violent her brother, Ken, and sister, Calcie, were becoming, she didn't want to risk either of them having a potential Saiyan warrior under their control. It was best that they let the attack ball travel to its intended destination. No. Just leave the Saiyan be. We can't risk Frieza catching wind of its presence and our own. As you wish. Shall we head back to the throne world then, Lilandra? The Shire princess nodded her head. Yes. Father is probably wondering where we are. Before Frieza could spot them, their battleship sped away using a pink streak of energy that was released from all 6 thrusters. Lilandra gave one last look at the Saiyan boy as he flew in the opposite direction. Poor child. You must be all alone at this point. She thought sympathetically. I wonder where you could be going. She then closed her eyes and held a firm hand over her chest. Somehow, someway, Lilandra hoped the boy would be able to overcome this sorrowful moment and continue to live on. May the gods bring light upon your journey, young Saiyan. As they parted ways, a single red bandana limply floated throughout the cosmos. Earth age 737, year 1984. Hours later, Kakarot's pod flew down to Earth's upper atmosphere. It was a planet mostly covered in water and 7 known pieces of land called continents. It didn't look like much at first glance, but Earth was home to a slew of supernatural, extraterrestrial, and superpowered individuals. The wide majority of these individuals were born with a unique gene that bestowed upon them with either powerful abilities or physical mutations. This supposed X gene, originating from the actions of Celestials millions of years ago, was what flowed through Kakarot's veins as well. Some Saiyans, surprisingly enough, were born the same way, but only a select few. The pod headed in the direction of Earth's lowest and coldest continent, Antarctica. It burned upon first contact, gaining more and more speed until it crashed into this white continent's uppermost tip. There, a savage land far different from the rest of the world in terms of both flora and fauna presided. Kakarot's sudden arrival to Earth, however, wasn't entirely unknown. Off the coast of another continent called North America, a massive hovercraft filled with jets and other advanced weaponry floated high above the clouds. This helicarrier housed 4 identical jet boosters that kept it in flight. It was primarily operated by a top-secret, government-run agency called the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division, or SHIELD for short. Their main purpose was to uphold international security and protect the world from any superhuman threats that may emerge. Leading this agency was its current director, Colonel Nicholas Joseph Fury. He was a middle-aged man with brown skin and a black beard wrapped around his chin. He also wore a black trench coat that matched a single eye patch placed over his left eye. It had been badly scarred during his prior service to the United States military. Fury kept both arms crossed behind his back in dismay. One of their many satellites just detected a small gray vessel crashing down somewhere in Antarctica. He scowled at the screen and directly addressed his fellow SHIELD operatives. Anyone mind telling me what the actual hell is that? We don't know, sir. It just came from somewhere in outer space. A female agent replied. Must be another extraterrestrial lifeform, if I were to guess. Fury snorted. Well, I figured that much. Just tell me where it's landing. Right away, Director Fury. She typed some commands into her keyboard and tracked the spacecraft's path. Bringing up a 3D map of the entire globe, Fury was able to see it land on the South Pole's furthest point. He narrowed his eyes in recognition. HMPH. The Savage Land. Isn't it the place filled with dinosaurs and other prehistoric life? A male agent asked. The very same. Truly a marvel of modern technology, isn't it? Fury said with a smirk. Should we send a team to retrieve the space pod and find out what's inside of it? Fury cupped his chin and thought. He doubted that one single craft would be much of a threat to Earth and its people. If anything, the dinosaurs and whatever magical mumbo-jumbo existed on the Savage Land would kill it before such an event could take place. No need. Just leave whatever that is be. But, sir. Don't make me repeat myself, Coulson. Until it actually proves itself to be a worthwhile opponent on Captain America or the Hulk's level, leave the alien be. Fury ordered. We'll keep tabs on it periodically from there. Agent Phil Coulson begrudgingly nodded in agreement. He didn't believe this alien creature could match Captain America, his childhood hero, in terms strength or character either. Although, there was a chance that both of them could be wrong. Sounds reasonable enough, sir. Fury nodded. Now, let's head back home. There's other work that needs to be done today. The helicarrier's computer monitor then changed from footage of the attack ball to something else. Although its existence was known, no one in SHIELD drew too much attention to it. That would certainly change in the years to come, though. Within the Savage Land. This small part of Antarctica was much warmer than the rest of it. Rather than being covered in ice and snow, the Savage Land was filled tropical jungles where multiple species of dinosaurs roamed. These varied from the terrifying Tyrannosaurus rex to the pteranodons and pterodactyls that flew across the skies in search of food. Some humans also took up residence here, but their numbers were significantly lower by comparison. One of these humans lived in the Savage Land's largest mountain and active volcano, Mount Paozu. It contained a series of mountain ranges where dinosaurs and even monsters particularly thrived. To keep himself safe from harm, an old martial artist, Gohan, lived in a small hut somewhere near Paozu's bamboo forests. He had chosen to isolate himself from the rest of the world many years prior, much to the ire of his closest friends and former mentor, Master Roshi. Son Gohan was a short elderly man with a white bushy mustache. He had a green beanie atop his bald head and wore an orange-yellow guy with long black sleeves. Attached to his back was a brown basket that he used to gather fruits, vegetables, and other supplies. He also used a red staff to help him hike at a more even pace. Pooh. It sure is hot today. He sighed. While wiping some sweat off his brow, he heard a loud crash come from some nearby area. It shook the entire mountain from side to side and almost knocked him off his feet. What in the world was that? Gohan went to investigate the source of this crash and, surprisingly, found a large gray ball. It was contained within a rather deep crater. That's strange, he muttered. Using his Kai, the old man hopped down into the crater to analyze the ball in greater detail. It suddenly popped open to reveal a young, naked boy seated inside. Oh my goodness. It's a little boy. The boy crawled out of his damaged pod and, out of fear, began to burst into tears. He didn't know where his mom and dad were. What? Oh, don't cry, little fella. It's okay. Gohan cooed. He grabbed the young boy and held him up with his hands. He was surprised to see a monkey tail hang down from his backside. What do you know? You have a tail. The old martial artist chuckled. You must not be from around here, huh? The monkey-tailed boy sniffled and began gradually to calm down in Gohan's presence. You seem like a strange little guy, but don't worry. I'm a little odd myself, believe it or not. He muttered in amusement. I'd have to be to live in a scary place like this. Little by little, the boy's sadness was replaced by growing happiness. He kicked Gohan in the face and began to giggle in a much more cheerful manner. Oh. You're a little stinker, aren't you? Goodness. You should take it easy on me. I'm old enough to be your grandpa, you know. Gohan grumbled while rubbing his stricken jaw. He then smiled at the young boy. Being a grandpa didn't sound all that bad, actually. Now, let's see. What should I call you? The old martial artist thought for a moment or two before, finally, coming up with a good name for this kid. Yes. I think I know what to call you. How about I name you Goku? The newly named Goku broke out into a fit of laughter just hearing this name. Ha ha ha. Oh, you like that, huh? Alright then. Son Goku, it is. Woohoo. Gohan laughed as he bounced his adoptive grandson up and down. Goku? What a good little boy. From that point onward, the son of Bardock and Jain would no longer be called Kakarot. He was now Son Goku, a boy who had many adventures and experiences in store for him. He'd just need to survive the savage land first. Approximately 6 years later. Goku and his new grandfather, Gohan, didn't get along at first. Due to being a Saiyan, the toddler was unruly and violent by nature. He would hit, bite, and kick the old man many times, even when doing something as simple as taking a bath. The only time he'd go back to his cheerful self was when they ate food together. He seemed to have the biggest appetite Gohan had ever seen up until that point. Whether it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, Goku was always hungry for more. Gohan considered asking for some assistance from Master Roshi and his fellow Turtle School of Martial Arts student Ox King, but ended up changing his mind. It wouldn't feel right to thrust this kind of responsibility on them, especially after living in the savage land for so long. Thankfully, everything began to change one day. After picking a fight with some wild pterodactyls, Goku fell off of a ravine and slammed his head into some rocks. This brought him into a comatose state that Gohan was afraid he wouldn't wake up from. He covered the boy's head in bandages and prayed to whatever god was out there to save him. To his relief, his prayers were heard. Goku woke up and became the complete opposite of what he used to be. He was goofy, affectionate and absent-minded, yet still kept his love for fighting and food, nonetheless. The trauma from that accident must have erased all of his violent impulses somehow, and Gohan couldn't be happier with the results. Goku was now the best grandson he could ever wish for. For that reason, Gohan decided to pass on his martial arts techniques to Goku. He had an knack for fighting tough opponents by default, so teaching him self-defense was logical from his perspective. After all, there was a chance that they'd need to fight off dinosaurs and man-apes sometime soon. They couldn't stay on Mount Paozu forever. They trained for years and years on end until Goku turned 6 years old. As expected, he proved to be a natural at martial arts and, at this rate, would be able to surpass his own grandfather one day. This made Gohan decide to amp up Goku's training to the next level. "What's next, Grandpa? Are we going to punch some big yummy fish again?" He beamed. The boy was now wearing a blue guy tied down by a white sash. His shoes were almost identical to Gohan's in regard to style. Gohan looked up at the sky. It would be nighttime very soon, so they'd need to finish their training session as soon as possible. "Maybe tomorrow, Goku. We'll need to get ready for bed soon." Goku slumped his shoulders in disappointment. "Really? Aw, man. I was really looking forward to that. Tell you what. How about I show you a very strong technique that my old master, Roshi, taught me? Would you like that?" The monkey-tailed boy pumped his fist in newfound excitement and giddiness. "Hey. You bet, Gramps. Lem see it. Lem see it." Gohan chuckled and said, "Alright. Pay close attention now, Goku." Taking a deep breath, the old man squatted down and cupped both of his hands together. He positioned himself in front of a nearby tree. Hamiya. The blue and white sphere of Kai materialized between Gohan's hands. It grew larger and more chaotic with each subsequent syllable. Hamiya. The Kai sphere spun around and produced multiple beams of light from it. Ha. Gohan outstretched his arms and unleashed a giant powerful blue energy blast. It incinerated a few trees upon impact before dissolving. Its wielder took another deep breath and stood up straight. Goku was absolutely blown away by the move he just saw. "Wow. That's awesome. What's it called?" That was the Kamehameha wave, or Turtle Devastation wave if going by the original name. "It is a Kai blast invented by my old martial arts instructor and friend, Master Roshi," his grandfather explained. He then smiled from ear to ear. "He taught it to me and now, I will be teaching it you, my boy. Seriously, that's so cool. Can I try it out now, Grandpa? Please?" "Well, don't be getting too ahead of yourself. It takes 50 years of hard work and dedication to learn." Ignoring what his grandpa had to say, Goku cupped his hands together and perfectly copied the old man's stance. "Hamiya Hamiya," he muttered. Much to Gohan's shock, a small sphere of Kai emerged in the center of his palms. Ha! Goku fired his own Kamehameha wave at another tree. Although not as powerful, it still incinerated the bamboo stalk instantly. The Saiyan peered down at his hands and smiled. "Hey, look at that. I did it." He beamed. "It wasn't as good as yours, though." Gohan blinked a few times in disbelief. What the 6-year-old boy displayed was nothing short of astounding, from his perspective. No kid his age could ever dream of using such an advanced technique. Was that some sort of mimicry Goku just displayed? Huh. Apparently, the boy is much smarter than I give him credit for. Smiling from ear to ear, he walked over to the boy and proudly patted him on the back. "Excellent progress, Goku. You'll be a master at using the Kamehameha wave in no time." "You really think so?" Goku replied in a hopeful tone. "You're my grandson." "Of course, I do," the old man warmly proclaimed. "Now, let's head off to bed and get some shut-eye. We can continue training tomorrow." "Alright then." The two then entered their hut without another word. It was a small square building with a blue triangular roof and white walls. Inside, there was a bunk bed and a few tables. One of these tables had an orange ball with 4 red stars on it. Goku looked at the strange ball in curiosity. It rested on top of a small purple pillow as he examined it from left to right and top to bottom. "Hey grandpa. Why do you keep this funny looking ball around? Does it mean something?" "That isn't just any funny looking ball, Goku. It's a Dragon Ball." Gohan corrected him. Goku titled his head to the side, looking more confused. "Dragon Ball? MMHM. Legends say that if you collect all 7 Dragon Balls, an eternal dragon named Shenron will come and grant any wish you desire. I, sadly, only have the 4-star ball, but it's still nice to have, regardless." Cool. Goku hummed in growing interest. He then turned his head to look up at the old martial artist. "What would you wish for, Grandpa?" Gohan just smiled and ruffled his grandson's hair in response. "I already have everything I could ever wish for, my boy. There's nothing better than being here with you." The young Saiyan rubbed the back of his head in slight embarrassment. I guess that makes sense." But that last statement, they both piled into their respective beds. Goku laid down at the bottom while Grandpa Gohan slept at the top. "Good night, kiddo. Don't stay up too late, okay?" "I won't. Good night, Grandpa." They then drifted off to sleep and stayed that way for a good few hours. Goku's rumbling stomach, however, wasted no time in waking him up. He rubbed the sleep out of his eyes and yawned. "I'm hungry again." Tiptoeing out of the hut as quietly as possible, Goku left to pick some apples from a nearby tree. He munched on a few of them before being interrupted by the sight of the moon. It was completely full that night, taking him a little by surprise. He didn't even know it could look like that until now. "Wow. I've never seen the moon look so big before." Goku abruptly dropped his apples and continued gazing up at the moon. His heart began to relentlessly beat against his chest. Badump. 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 Eyes glowing a blue red, Goku's small body slowly transformed into that of a gigantic monkey with razor-sharp teeth. He towered over Mount Paozu's entire forest and roared in pure, unbridled rage. "Braya." Gohan woke up to a start hearing this terrifying roar. He looked down to see that Goku was no longer in his bed. "Goku." Quickly grabbing the power pole, he jumped out of bed and ran outside. He was shocked to see a giant monster standing before him. It went on an absolute rampage and used its fists to smash everything in sight. "Grrragh." Grah. Gohan saw the monster's long tail and immediately knew who it was. He looked from Goku to the full moon in absolute horror. "Oh no. You transformed because of the full moon, didn't you, Goku?" Baring his teeth, the transformed Goku attempted to flatten the old man with a swift punch. Gohan immediately thought fast and stuck his staff into the ground. "Power pole, extend." Upon command, the power pole grew in size and sent Gohan soaring into the air. This allowed him to evade the great ape's fist, much to his visible irritation. Brag. Gohan somersaulted from where the power pole flung him and cupped his hands together in midair. He didn't wish to use this technique on Goku, but there was no other way to stop him. Hami. The old man quickly charged up a Kamehameha wave and fired it at Goku's face. Ha! This caused the transformed Saiyan to stomp around and clutch his red eyes in utter pain. Large craters in the ground were produced from every step he took. Brag. Grrragh. Landing on his feet, Gohan stood in a fighting stance. He darted his eyes toward Goku's tail in sudden realization. His tail. It must be the cause of this transformation. The old man thought. I need to get rid of it fast. He coated one of his hands in white kai and sped over to Goku's tail using instantaneous movement. Right as he was about to chop the monkey tail in two, Goku smacked him aside with it. Ah! No. Gohan painfully crashed into the ground with a firm smack. His frail body, despite being stronger than the average humans, was broken beyond foreseeable repair. He didn't even have the strength to stand back up. "I am sorry, Goku. I tried my best to stop this. I really did." The old man groaned with tears in his eyes. Goku then hovered over his fallen form and raised up his leg, snarling. Even in the face of imminent death, Gohan could only smile through the pain. "Continue to grow stronger, Goku. Don't blame yourself for what happened here either. It wasn't your fault," he whispered. The last thing he saw was the shadow of Goku's foot coming closer to him. "Goodbye, my boy. I love you." He was then crushed to death by the supreme force of Goku's stomp. Thankfully, his body mysteriously disappeared before any more pain could be felt. Some unknown force must have retrieved him in time. Oblivious to what just happened, Great Ape Goku peed on his chest and fired a powerful energy blast from his mouth. It caused a distant mountain to explode into millions of tiny pieces. Rah! His monstrous roars could be heard for miles across the entire savage land. However, rather than rage, these last few hours were laced with sorrow and remorse. The transformed Goku wasn't sentient enough to understand why, though. He raged for another few hours or so, causing untold amounts of destruction in his wake. No one dared go near Mount Paozu that entire night and instead attempted to sleep through it. Some of the man-apes, primitive Neanderthals native to this part of Antarctica, even bowed down to Goku, as if he were their god. This, however, ended once the sun rose. Goku transformed back to his normal self and, with absolutely no clothes on his body, fell unconscious. His actions, unbeknownst to him or anyone else, were observed by a strong, ethereal entity. This entity was a young adult woman wearing a black hood and robes. Her skin was a ghostly pale with shoulder-length black hair that matched her outfit. Her lips were also a dark shade that contrasted well with her orangish, almost gray eyes. With each movement, she changed in and out of a more haunting skeletal form. She went by many names, but her most well-known identity was Mistress Death, Sister of Infinity, Eternity, and Oblivion. Death, the dark beauty herself, hovered over to Goku's unconscious form. She frowned at his innocent yet peaceful expression. "I'm sorry for taking away your grandfather like this, young son Goku," she murmured in an ominous voice. "Such a happy pure child, yet forced to experience so much loss and hardship. It doesn't bring me much joy to see you go through this." She pointed toward the boy and put him in a fresh pair of clothes. She then gently picked him up, brushing his black bangs to the side with a small grin. "But fret not. Your perseverance and strength as a warrior will undoubtedly be rewarded someday," Mistress Death promised. "I've viewed many a timeline where you exist. You'll become quite a powerful man amongst this world's past and future heroes, I assure you." The immortal deity entered Grandpa Gohan's hut and gently placed Goku back into his bed. After tucking him underneath the covers, she rested a cold hand over his cheek. "It's a shame that I can't claim you now, but sadly, it is not your time yet. You have much more experiences and challenges to go through before we can meet face to face." She parted her hand from his cheek and let him sleep in relative peace. Death then floated over to the hut's doorway, grinning at Goku one last time. "Until we meet again, Saiyan of Earth." She then transported herself away using a field of blue cosmic energy. Until the time was right, Death would wait as long as it took for her chosen champion to grow stronger. Whether he would prove to be equal in strength to her other suitor, Thanos, was yet to be determined. Several hours later. By the late afternoon, Goku had awoken from his slumber. He fluttered his eyes open and gently rubbed his cheek. It felt cold to the touch for some reason. "Did I sleep on some ice or something?" he muttered in confusion. "Hey, Grandpa, does it feel cold too?" Goku looked up to see that no one was sleeping in the bed above him. He felt even more confused now. "Grandpa?" He got up and looked around their hut, but no trace of the old man could be found. He then walked outside and saw countless amounts of damage everywhere. Bamboo stalks were completely uprooted from the ground, mountains were split in half, and the ground beneath his feet was almost cracked to pieces. Whoa. What the heck happened here? He cautiously stepped forward to get a closer look at Mount Paozu's current condition. Set atop the ground was Gohan's power pole, which remained in perfect condition. The power pole, but that means this damage was from. Goku's eyes began to water as he assumed that some dinosaur came and ate his grandpa or worse. That would explain the massive footprints and cracks in the mountain surface. And no. "Where are you, Grandpa? Where'd you go?" Not wishing to believe that his only family member was gone, Goku sprinted towards the edge of Mount Paozu and cupped both hands around his mouth. "Grandpa?" he yelled at the top of his lungs. Unfortunately, no one replied. Apart from other people and creatures living in the savage land, Goku was now completely alone. He wiped his tears and sniffled. Since Gohan wouldn't want him to give up hope like this, he took a deep breath and wrapped the power pole's holster around his shoulder. "I won't forget what you told me, Grandpa. I promise I'll get stronger," he croaked under his breath. "I'll make you proud wherever you may be." After making that last proclamation, the 6-year-old boy walked back inside and kneeled in front of the 4-star Dragon Ball. He rested both hands in front of him and prayed for his grandpa's safety. He would still continue to think about him and his martial arts instructions, even if Gohan himself wasn't around anymore. Westchester County, New York, age 743, year 1990. Located in the town of North Salem, a large castle-like mansion presided. It contained a fancy lawn, pool, garden, and many other accommodations that cost quite a ton of money. It appeared to be just like any other home, but eventually, within a few years, this building would be transformed into a school for young mutant children, called the Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters. Mutants were a fairly marginalized group in today's age, so this school would help provide a home for these troubled kids, while also working to improve relations between Homo sapiens and Homo superior. However, it was not time for it to become that place yet. For now, only one mutant lived inside the mansion. This mutant, Professor Charles Xavier, was a gifted geneticist and telepath. He was a bald man in his early 40s wearing a green suit and brown undershirt. Although fairly tall, he spent most of his time confined to a single gray wheelchair. Due to inheriting quite a sizable fortune from his family, Xavier used his money to purchase and fund technologically advanced devices. The device he personally took pride in was Cerebro, a helmet that amplified its users' brainwaves to a point where mutants could be detected across the entire globe. This relied on either the energy produced from their superhuman abilities or respective X gene. This helmet was concealed in a large chamber underneath the mansion. Xavier was currently in the process of using it. It wrapped around his head and tapped into his underlying telepathic powers. So many mutants, yet so much inner turmoil. It's a shame that the world has yet to accept us. He thought internally. To his chagrin, he could hear the screams of certain mutant children being abused or mistreated by common, everyday people. It always amazed him how cruel humanity could be in the face of change. Suddenly, he heard the loud, guttural roar of a particularly powerful mutant. His eyes widened in surprise. What on earth? I've never sensed this mutant specimen before. He, with a bit of struggle, focused his mind to track the mutant's current whereabouts. It was located in the Savage Land of all places. The Savage Land. That's where Gohan disappeared to all those years ago. His friendship with the old martial artist was unconventional, yet genuine all the same. They went on a few brief adventures together during his temporary stay in Japan. Gohan was certainly a powerful fighter, but not a mutant by any means. That meant this unknown mutant must have arrived in Antarctica between now and the very moment Gohan left alive there. Was it born there? Or perhaps, did it arrive in the Savage Land from some place foreign to Earth? He had no idea which option to consider. Taking a deep breath, Professor Xavier removed Cerebro from his head and began to think. It still wasn't quite time to locate mutants who could join his team, but this presence did raise a few concerns. He rummaged through his pocket and pulled out a Dragon Ball with 6 stars on it. He studied the magical orange ball with his brown eyes. I just hope that whatever events transpired in the Savage Land today, they don't affect Gohan's promise to keep the 4-star ball safe. Xavier grimaced in worry. There's no telling what Magnus is planning to do once he collects all 7. His grimace deepened in vivid remembrance of his former friend and ally. He was somewhat relieved that Magnus Eisenhardt, now going under the sinister alias Magneto, did not have a way to locate the Dragon Balls like Cerebro did with mutants. The world would be in great danger if such a device came into existence. He rubbed a hand over his chin and put the Dragon Ball away. It may take a few more years of preparation, but one day, I'll need to investigate this new mutant specimen. I'll need to form more connections and partnerships beforehand, though. Xavier activated his automatic wheelchair and rolled out of Cerebro's containment chamber. 2 revolving doors with a large X symbol on it closed behind him. Will that be enough to stop Magneto from accomplishing his goals? That question, I suppose, will need to be answered at a later date. He then narrowed his eyes and expressed his broad hopes for the future of mutant kind. When that day comes, it'll be the job of my future X-Men to stop him. Westchester County, New York, age 749, year 1996. It was now September 1, 1996. 6 long years have passed since Professor Charles Xavier detected a mutant hidden in the Savage Land. Ever since that day, the wheelchair-bound researcher has consistently used Cerebro to locate other mutants who could prove viable to his cause. One notable example was Jean Elaine Grey, a young radiated girl with telepathic abilities that surpassed even his own. Jean's parents asked him to help her back in 1990, but due to how extremely powerful and unstable her telekinesis proved to be, Xavier was forced to suppress them until she was more mature. Something otherworldly in nature was stirring within the girl's mind, but Xavier couldn't exactly figure who or what it was. He would need to figure it out once he contacted Jean again sometime this year. The other mutants that the professor came across were an orphan boy living at the state home for foundlings, a young Kenyan woman he encountered in Cairo 6 years ago, a talented biochemist and athlete with larger than average feet, and many more. These people both had the potential necessary to join his future team of superhumans, the X-Men. They would be needed to stop Magneto and his plans for world domination, especially due to how many followers he has accrued over the past few years. Xavier would have attempted to form this team earlier, but he didn't quite have the resources and connections necessary to do so. The first thing he needed to do was refine Cerebro's basic functions with Maura McTaggart, its Scottish co-creator and his former fiancée. During their time as students at Oxford University, they were deeply in love with each other, but due to unfortunate circumstances, she had to end their engagement. They still, however, remained on good enough terms to officially found the Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters together. She provided technological support via her Mutant Research Centre on Muir Island, Scotland. Additional help was received by Dr. Brief, a brilliant Japanese scientist who served as official CEO for his company, Capsule Corporation. His talent as an inventor and businessman made him one of the richest people on the entire planet, next to Anthony Tony Stark and Norman Osborn. Due to having pro-mutant views, Brief was happy to construct a high-tech facility called the Danger Room, where young mutants could hone and train their respective abilities. It was, as its name implied, highly dangerous, but the results greatly impressed Xavier, nonetheless. What impressed the professor even more was Dr. Brief's youngest daughter, Bulma. Although exceedingly vain and hot-headed like many other girls her age, she had a mind arguably larger than her father's. This granted her the intelligence necessary to design a dragon radar, which could track the Dragon Ball's current locations worldwide. It was the final step he needed to bring his plans into fruition. So, as soon as Bulma's summer vacation from high school had begun, Xavier contacted Dr. Brief and asked her to come visit him in New York. She had always wanted to explore the United States, so convincing her, thankfully, didn't take much effort. Using one of the hovercrafts contained in Capsule Corporation's trademark Hoi Poi capsules, Bulma flew over to the X-Mansion without delay. She was a 16-year-old girl with light blue hair tied up into a braid. Tied down by a red bow, she also had big blue eyes of the same color. Her outfit comprised of a purple scarf wrapped around her neck, a pink dress that extended just below the waist, purple socks, blue shoes, and a brown belt. Written in the center of her shirt was Bulma in bold black and white lettering. "Welp, this looks like the place," Bulma said. She then brought out a dino cap and sealed the hovercraft back inside of it in a large puff of smoke. After stuffing the small capsule into her satchel, Bulma cautiously walked over to the mansion's front door. "DCH. If Dad wasn't so cheap, he could have bought a place as nice as this, and then some," she muttered before gently knocking her hand on the door and speaking in near-perfect English. "Professor Xavier? Are you in there?" "It's me, Bulma." "Yes, I am, Ms. Brief. You may come in, please." Hearing the Englishman's voice, Bulma pushed open the mansion's door and entered it. It was quite massive on the inside, including everything from a chandelier, couches, chairs, and an ornate fireplace. There were also various shelves filled with what seemed like hundreds of books and research documents. She looked from left to right with a light grin on her face. "Fancy?" Bulma then directed her attention to Professor Xavier. Now around the age of 47, he was wearing a gray coat over a black turtleneck shirt. He smiled at the teenage inventor and moved his wheelchair closer to her. "Welcome to my mansion. Your father has told me so much about you." She snorted in reply. "Oh, I'm sure he has. Betty went on a tangent about me skipping school all the time, huh? Haha. Yes. That may have come up in conversation once or twice." Xavier chuckled. "But all jokes aside, you should be proud of what you've built at such a young age. Your intellect may even rival Tony Stark's one day." "Thanks for the compliments, Professor, but I'm nowhere near that Iron Man guy's level. Not yet, at least." Bulma muttered in slight embarrassment. She wouldn't admit it to anyone, but ever since Tony Stark, CEO of Stark Industries, revealed himself to be the armored superhero, Iron Man, he had become somewhat of a personal idol her. It didn't help that she used to have a small crush on him during earlier points of her childhood. Xavier smirked at the thoughts going through her head. Despite her incredibly gifted mind, she was still just an ordinary teenage girl. She, however, wasn't a mutant, much to his ever so slight disappointment. "Regardless, I'm still quite intrigued by the inventions you've made. Do you mind if I take a closer look at that dragon radar of yours?" "Sure. Go ahead." Bulma rummaged through her bag and pulled out a large, stopwatch-like device. It was white with a circular green map placed in the center. There was also a large button located on top. She handed it over so the professor could inspect it. Simple, yet intuitive design. How does it work exactly?" Xavier asked. Bulma pointed to the top of the dragon radar. "It's actually as simple as it looks, Professor. You just press that button a few times and the Dragon Ball should appear on screen." "I see." With a single press of his finger, 7 orange lights flickered to the sound of a loud beeping noise. One of the lights was in line with the mansion's current location, showing that Bulma's invention did indeed work. He then pulled out his 6-star Dragon Ball and grimaced. He has still held onto it after all these years. It's ingenious, yet quite dangerous at the same time. There's no telling what Magnus could do with this kind of device in his possession. Luckily, as of now, Ms. Brief has the only copy in existence. Temporarily keeping those thoughts at bay, Xavier handed the Dragon Radar back to Capsule Corporation's heiress. "Excellent work, Bulma. This will definitely make our search for the Dragon Balls much simpler than expected." "Not to sound rude, Professor, but what exactly do you want with the Dragon Balls, anyway? Don't you already have enough stuff as is?" the girl asked while gesturing to everything in Xavier's mansion. "Fair question. It's something a bit more nobler than wishing for a lifetime supply of strawberries or the perfect boyfriend, I assure you. Bulma jumped up and covered her mouth in sudden embarrassment. Her cheeks flushed a bright red. Beep. How did you? I'm a telepath, Ms. Brief. Reading minds is what I and other mutants like myself do best. Xavier replied. Oh right. I almost forgot that Dad said you were one of those guys. The girl muttered. She then waved both hands in front of her body, assuming that Xavier took what she said the wrong way. And not that there's anything wrong with that, though. I get along with almost everyone. Xavier nodded his head in understanding. I didn't claim otherwise, Bulma. Your father has supported equality between mutants and humans for many years now. It's the main reason why I selected you to accompany me on this journey of mine. And what kind of journey would that be? The professor clasped his hands together and held them in front of his mouth. He began to ruminate over events that happened sometimes between the years 1989 and 1990. You may not be aware of this, my dear, but there exist some mutants who view this world with utter disdain and vitriol. They have grown to resent the prejudice directed towards their natural-born gifts and thus have given up on living in peace altogether. He explained. These mutants decide to commit evil actions that further degrade relations between my people and yours. He closed his eyes and sighed. It was difficult to remember the days when he could still walk, even years after the initial incident took place. One such evil mutant was a man named Amal Farag, whom I first encountered in Cairo, Egypt 7 years ago. His telepathic abilities were so unspeakably dark and twisted that I came to realize how dangerous mutant abilities could be in the wrong hands. Xavier grimaced in momentary disgust. From there, I have decided to bring mankind and its mutant children together as a team, one that would protect all of humanity from sinister beings like Farag, or as other people have come to know him, the Shadow King. He then opened his eyes and narrowed them with the utmost determination. They will be called my X-Men. Bulma raised an eyebrow at this name. X-Men, huh? That sounds all well and good on paper, but what does this idea have to do with the Dragon Balls? There exists another mutant just as dangerous as the Shadow King, I'm afraid. He used to be an old friend and colleague of mine before his hatred for humanity consumed him. Xavier darkly proclaimed. Once known as Max Eisenhardt or Magnus to most people he interacted with, he has long since dubbed himself Magneto and plans to use the Dragon Balls to accomplish his goal of making mutants the dominant species on the planet. Dominant species? How would he do that? Last time I checked, mutants were considered a minority in most places around the world, especially Japan. Remember, according to legend, the Dragon Balls can grant any wish a person desires. And what Magneto desires is to wish for everyone to become mutants, even if it is against their will. Xavier unveiled with a concerned look on his face. If we don't stop him, mutants will become the majority and the entire human race as we know it will cease to exist. Wow. This Magneto dude is taking mutant supremacy to a whole other level then. Bulma gulped. Her pale face contorted into one of growing confusion. Is it even possible for billions of people to change into mutants just like that? Xavier rested a hand over his chin and thought. I'm not entirely sure, but we can't afford to take any chances. Magneto has likely gathered a group of followers to support his cause, so I must do the same. He exclaimed. You have one of the Dragon Balls with you, correct? Bulma reached into her bag and pulled out another Dragon Ball. This one had 2 red stars on it. Yep. I found the 2-star ball in Capsule Corporation's basement a few days ago. Excellent. Then it is time for us to visit an old friend of mine in Antarctica, Ms. Brief. He has the 4-star ball in his possession. She pushed the Dragon Radar's button a few times until an orange light appeared near the world's southernmost point. You're right. The radar says it is around that area. She affirmed with a dramatic sigh. I just wish it could have been located somewhere warmer. I hate the cold. On the contrary, the part of Antarctica we'll be visiting is a tropical environment filled with various trees and dinosaurs. It is called the Savage Island, and my friend, Gohan, has lived there for almost 12 years. Bulma, ironically, shivered in response to this description. He must have been pretty crazy to willingly live amongst dinosaurs for that long. I wouldn't have even lasted a day. Xavier laughed. Haha. You could say that, yes. Gohan was quite an eccentric character, but an incredibly talented martial artist all the same. His fighting abilities were said to rival the Hand's strongest members. Yeesh. If that's the case, then he must still be alive and kicking by now. Bulma assumed, given what she's heard about Japan's most notorious crime syndicate. They made the Yakuza look harmless by comparison. I wish I knew that to be the case, Bulma. Xavier muttered. What do you mean? Did something happen to him? I don't know. All I know is that 6 years ago, I detected an immensely powerful mutant coming from Mount Paozu, the Savage Island's largest mountain range. It let out a loud roar before vanishing just as fast as it emerged. the professor recalled. Gohan chose to live within Paozu, so his life might have been put in danger that day. Bulma positioned herself next to Xavier and lightly patted him on the shoulder. That's all we can do is go there and see for ourselves, Professor. He lightly nodded his head. I suppose you're right. We should leave immediately. Do you know how to get to this Savage Land place or whatever? She wondered. Of course, Bulma. I've been there a few times myself. There are a series of tunnels leading to the Savage Land beneath Antarctica. I'll lead you to them. Sounds good, but what about your she faltered while awkwardly gesturing towards his legs. Thankfully, Xavier was smart enough to understand what she meant. I'll manage, Ms. Brief. I've grown accustomed to being paralyzed these past 6 years, so a brief expedition to Mount Paozu won't be an issue for me. There's no need for concern. The young inventor shrugged. If you say so, Professor. Xavier then handed her the 6-star ball so she could place it in her bag. Afterwards, they exited the mansion and made preparations to leave. As Bulma brought out her hovercraft's dino cap, the professor thought about the mutant he sensed on Mount Paozu once again. I hope that wherever Gohan and the 4-star ball are located, this mutant will be with them. Perhaps they could be the first person to join my X-Men. Mount Paozu, Savage Land, age 749, year 1996. After realizing that Gohan died and was never coming back, Goku tried his best to move on. He continued practicing the martial arts techniques his grandpa taught him, including the supremely powerful Kamehameha wave. He preferred to train by fighting with dinosaurs and other people living in the Savage Land. One of the boy's most common sparring partners was Khazar, the Savage Land's sworn protector, and his pet saber-toothed tiger, Zabu. Although originally at odds with each other, Khazar slowly warmed up to Goku upon discovering his close relationship with Gohan, a former mentor of the young wild man. They went on many different adventures together and even fought Magor, leader of the man-apes who, many years prior, murdered an English nobleman and Khazar's father Lord Robert Plunder. As a token of appreciation for helping him defeat Magor, Khazar brought Goku over to visit the Savage Land's hunter-gatherer society, the Fall People, on many different occasions. He developed a fast friendship with its chieftain, Tonga, and heard tales about the Savage Land's supposed creators, the Nuwali, from him. Goku didn't understand a word of what he was talking about, but he enjoyed being in Tonga's company, nonetheless. The Fall People even asked him to stay in their tribe, but the monkey-tailed warrior declined. He just felt more comfortable staying in the mountains where Gohan raised him. Tonga's daughter, Nariel, who developed a slight crush on him, was a bit disappointed by this decision, but Goku didn't notice. He was only taught the most basic knowledge about girls that his grandpa could offer him, so that type of stuff didn't catch his radar at all. Years passed until little Goku was now a slightly taller 12-year-old boy. Khazar was roughly around the age of 18 or 19, but despite their age difference, they continued to remain friends and fellow protectors of the Savage Land. They remained so close, in fact, that Zabu was personally sent to watch over Gohan's adoptive grandson every so often. It might have been out of mere obligation or an older brother-younger brother type instinct for the man previously known as Kevin Plunder. Goku, at the moment, was standing in a combat stance. As promised to his grandfather 6 years ago, he had gotten a lot stronger than before. He picked up a large log and, with relative ease, tossed it straight into the air. As it fell back down to earth, the boy jumped towards it. Hi-ya. Yeah. He kicked the log and spit it into an even stack of 15 wooden blocks. Goku clapped his hands together in content. Like more than half a decade ago, he still wore a blue guy and a white sash, but this time, with yellow pants on. His wristbands were also pink instead of red. Well, that takes care of that. He said before clutching his empty stomach. I'm hungry. Whoa. Not wanting to waste any more time, Goku ran into his grandpa's hut and hoisted the power pole around his shoulder. He tied its holster to his chest with a thin white string. I'm going to go get some food. He then walked over to the 4-star ball and prayed to it before leaving. It hadn't left that spot since Gohan's death. Due to him failing to find his body, Goku began to assume that the old man's spirit was inhabiting this Dragon Ball and thus didn't want to risk touching it. He was too afraid to lose the last trace of his grandfather that he had left. Grandpa, stay there, okay? This won't take long. I'll be right back. Goku whispered. Right as he was about to walk away, the Dragon Ball glowed a bright orange and let out a faint humming noise. It stopped after a few seconds, much to Goku's surprise. Huh. I've never seen you shine bright like that before, Grandpa. How strange. He muttered in slight awe. Can you do it again? The 4-star ball remained motionless and didn't glow a second time. You can wait until later if you have to. See you in a little while. Goku then left his hut behind and walked into a nearby forest. He was surrounded by a sea of coniferous pine trees. Now, what should I have to eat today? He hummed to himself while looking from side to side. Gosh, it's so hard to decide. Why don't you decide, tummy? He looked down at his stomach for a moment before running along a pathway and flipping on top of a tree branch. Fish. Fish. Yeah, that sounds really great. Alright. He somersaulted from branch to branch and then swung along using a vine. The martial artist then spotted a significantly larger tree filled with apples. He landed on top of a rock formation so he could get a closer look. But first, I'm gonna need a little snack. Goku leaped over to the apple tree and wrapped his tail around the highest branch. Hanging off of it like a possum, he grabbed an apple and contentedly munched on it. That sure was tasty. Roar. After tossing away the apple core, Goku looked down to see a familiar saber-toothed tiger standing below him. He was an 800-pound animal with orange fur and fearsome green eyes. His long sharp teeth hung along the sides of his jaw. "Oh, hey Zabu. I didn't see you down there," he greeted with a wide smile. He quickly gulped down another apple and hopped off the tree to stroke the Smilodon's head. "How's it going, buddy?" Roar. Zabu happily roared. He purred and rubbed his head against Goku's body. "Prrrrrrr. Glad to see you're doing okay." Goku laughed. "Is Kazar with you?" Zabu shook his head and gestured towards a deeper part of the Savage Land's many jungles. Goku nodded along in semi-understanding. "Ah, I see. He must be hunting some pteranodons again or something," he said with a shrug of his shoulders. "Oh well. Before he comes back, do you want to hunt some fish with me, Zabu? You look a bit hungry yourself." In that moment, Zabu's stomach loudly groaned. The tiger sheepishly looked away in what could best be interpreted as embarrassment. Roar. Roar. I'll take that as a yes. Goku laughed. He then started running in the direction of a nearby lake. "Come on then. Catch me if you can, Zabu." Haha. Zabu took Goku's challenge to heart and playfully bounded after him. Roar. They both ran at faster than average speeds as Goku chuckled in sheer delight. He hadn't done something like this with Zabu and Kazar in quite a long time. Haha. We're almost there. Just a few more. He froze in place to see a large yellow thing flying towards them. He pulled out his power pole and protectively stood in front of Zabu. "What the heck is that?" Goku whispered. "Grrrrrrrr," Zabu growled as he bent his knees very low to the ground. Unlike Goku, the tiger knew exactly what this machine signified. It meant that people from the surface world were invading their home once again. It gently landed in front of the two savage landers, causing them to cautiously take a step backward. The flying contraption's door opened to reveal Bulma and Professor Charles Xavier. "Ah. Finally, some fresh air." Bulma sighed in relief. She stretched while looking back at the professor. "You know, it would have been nice to know that it took a few hours to get here, Professor." Xavier wheeled himself out of the aircraft as a ramp began to be manually set up. "I'm afraid that was a lapse of judgment on my part. I do apologize." He locked eyes with Goku and the hostile saber-toothed tiger. They were particularly focused on his monkey tail and the power pole resting in both of the child's hands. "That boy has the tail of a monkey tail. Could he be the mutant I sensed all those years ago?" Xavier thought. Curiouser is the fact that he has the power pole, or Naibo, in his possession. That means he must be affiliated with Gohan somehow. "Erg. Stop right there, you two. Are you working with this big flying monster?" Goku snarled in anger. He pointed his staff from Bulma to Xavier in quick succession. Dr. Brief's daughter blinked a few times in confusion. She jerked a thumb at the hovercraft parked behind her. "Monster? What are you talking about, kid? That's a. Say what you want, but Grandpa told me about evil creatures like you, and I know one when I see one. Your black hearts won't work on me or Zabu here." The orange Smilodon roared in agreement. Roar. Refusing to intervene before Goku could cause any damage to their ship, Xavier closed his eyes and rested both hands on either side of his forehead. "Calm down, young one. The two of us have come in peace." He spoke telepathically. Goku lowered the power pole and frantically looked around him in shock. Whoa. Someone's talking inside my head. "Who's saying that?" he asked, sharing direct eye contact with Kazar's tiger companion. "Was that you, Zabu?" "RRR. No, that was me, Son Goku. I projected my voice into your head using telepathy," Xavier informed. He rolled down the plane's ramp and positioned himself in front of Goku. "Silhouette now? Is that some kind of magic trick?" Bulma crossed her arms. "It means that he can read minds, kid. He's a mutant named Professor Charles Xavier. That's just what people like him can do." "Xavier? Wait a minute. Grandpa talked about you a few times before he died. He said you were good friends or something. So, Gohan truly is dead then? How tragic. If only I could have seen or spoke with him one last time." Professor X muttered under his breath. He sighed and sympathetically gazed at the boy. "I'm sorry for your loss, Goku. Do you remember how he died?" The boy frowned and shook his head. Not really. He just disappeared about 6 years ago. I never saw him again after that. Xavier squinted his eyes in suspicion. Without any shadow of doubt, he knew for certain that Goku was the mysterious mutant from before. At the same time, however, the boy's energy or presence didn't seem as monstrous as it was years prior. He wondered if this had something to do with Gohan's untimely death. I see. Does this mean you grew up all alone on Mount Paozu? Goku nervously scratched the back of his head. At first, yeah, but then I got to meet some good people like Zabu and my friend, Khazar. They've kept me company ever since. He stroked Zabu's head, making him act significantly less hostile in the process. Roar. Well, it's good to know that you've survived the savage land for this long. Allow me to properly introduce myself. Xavier cleared his throat and rested a hand over his chest. As Bulma already said, I am Professor Charles Xavier, a mutant researcher and geneticist seeking to promote equality in this world. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm Bulma. I'm not well, anything he just said, but I am a brilliant and beautiful inventor, if I do say so myself. You could try to be a little more humble, Ms. Brief. We just met the boy. Xavier mentally advised. Look who's talking, Bulma grumbled. Goku snickered to himself. Bulma. That's a pretty funny name, miss. Hey, Son Goku's not exactly normal either, so there. Yeah, but it's not weird as yours. Ugh. You be quiet. Bulma happens to be quite elegant. She huffed defensively. It's a lot better than Goku and Charles, that's for sure. HMPH. She then crossed her arms in a defiant manner. Mature as ever, Ms. Brief. Xavier sighed. Anyways, I've been meaning to ask you a question, Goku. A question, huh? Like what? It's about your monkey tail. Have you noticed that no other human in the savage land seems to have one? Now that you mention it, it does seem kinda weird. I always thought everybody had a tail like I do, but Khazar and the Fall people didn't. I never figured out why. I suspect it's because of your latent X gene, Goku. Since mutants, unlike normal humans, are either born with superhuman abilities, animal-like characters or something else, you might be one of them. A mutant? Goku repeated. He looked down at his feet in confusion. I never even knew something like that existed. Grandpa never talked about them when he was alive. Well, your grandfather may have had powerful abilities as a martial artist, but he wasn't mutant like we are. He probably didn't think it was a topic you could understand at such a young age. Xavier assumed. I think he was right about that. Bulma muttered. She could tell that Goku wasn't fully grasping the concept just yet. Is being a mutant bad or something? Is that why he didn't tell me? Oh, not at all. Mutation is a gift you should be proud of, Goku, not a curse. Mutants, at the end of the day, are just like any other person. Xavier informed. However, some people don't see things that way. That's why I am working to promote coexistence between mutants and humanity, so one day, a more peaceful, accepting world can be created. Company existence. Goku uttered in confusion. He didn't understand most of what the professor just said, but if it meant not being judged for his monkey tail, then such a concept was something he could get behind. He nodded his head and smiled at Xavier. I think I get what you're saying. Does this mean you came to the Savage Island to find me? Yes and no. We also came here because your grandpa had a Dragon Ball in his possession. Do you still have that somewhere, Goku? Bulma asked while innocently holding both hands behind her back. Oh. You mean the orange ball with 4 red stars? Yep. That's back at my grandpa's hut. I can take you guys there if you want. The monkey-tailed boy offered. That'd be much appreciated, Goku. We can talk some more once you lead us there. Xavier replied. Sure thing. Let's go. Goku chirped. He then walked over to Zabu and pointed towards the nearest jungle. Go tell Khazar what's going on, okay, Zabu? Roar. The tiger nodded his head and quickly ran into the distance. Getting a little nervous around that giant, potentially man-eating tiger, Bulma wiped some sweat off her forehead. Phew. That tiger can actually understand what you're saying. Yup. Zabu's pretty smart for a big cat. Goku said. He may look dangerous, but he's nice once you get to know him. This place just keeps getting weirder and weirder, Bulma whispered. Having a pleasant conversation with a hungry carnivore was not something she wished to cross off her bucket list. She was far too young and beautiful to die like that. After putting the yellow hovercraft back in its capsule, Bulma and Professor X followed Goku to his hut. Little did he know, someone was listening in on their conversation. Hidden behind a patch of bushes sat was former physician, geneticist, and hypnotherapist, Karl Lycos. Once a former colleague of Xavier's, he had gone missing in the Savage Land a few months ago. He had wished to marry his childhood sweetheart, Tanya Anderson, but due to being bitten by mutant pterodactyls as child, Karl felt a need to absorb life energy, or Kai, from both people and animals. Lycos drained various patients of their energy until one day, he could not contain the sense of guilt building up inside of him and fled to Tierra del Fuego, an archipelago in the lowest point of South America. Not wishing to potentially harm Tanya with his powers, Carl jumped off a cliff in an attempt to kill himself. Unfortunately, Lycos survived and ended up traveling to the savage land. He tried to live off as little energy as possible, but the hunger for more was far too great. And now that not one, but two mutants have revealed themselves, Lycos felt compelled to try feeding off of them. Mutants, after all, had more life energy than a typical human did. A mutant martial artist like Goku might have even more to spare. And no. Charles is my friend. I can't do something so unspeakable to him. Only the devil would contemplate it. He hissed. He slammed his fist against a nearby tree in growing frustration. Damn it all. For what reason did he have to arrive here of all places? To finally locate young mutant specimens and train them as he always told me he would. Lycos was a muscular man with short brown hair and a blue loincloth. He used to be wearing a green parka, but it had long since been lost to time. And again, that young mutant is brimming with all sorts of energy. If I absorb just an ounce of his strength, I will feel more power than I have ever experienced before. I'm sure of it. Lycos sneered in desperation. Then and only then will my ravenous thirst be quenched. It may be the key to seeing my beautiful Tanya again. Tears built up in his eyes just thinking of the woman's blonde hair and blue eyes. He rested a hand over his face in newfound grief. I suppose this place is a fitting prison for a savage beast such as myself, he muttered. Choosing to endure the pain, Lycos kept himself hidden within the shadows and stalked his newest prey. About 30 minutes later. You really couldn't wait to eat that fish, huh? Bulma darted her eyes toward a large blue fish Goku was dragging across the floor. For some reason, he insisted on catching it before they walked over to his house. It didn't take too long, thankfully, but seeing him lure the fish in with his tail was still a bit bizarre. Nope. A fish as big as this guy is pretty hard to find. The martial artist replied. Xavier looked at the fish's now vacant and soulless wide eyes. It died the very moment Goku kicked it in the face. He would have been more than impressed if it weren't so disturbing. I'm just amazed you were able to kill it with one blow. Gohan sure has taught you well. The professor said. You bet. Grandpa really did know a thing or two about martial arts, alright. Goku chuckled in fond reminiscence. He was curious to see how they'd react to the Kamehameha wave. That'll prove to be quite useful as a member of the X-Men. I knew selecting him as my first student was the right call to make. Xavier thought to himself. I wonder how he'll get along with Jean and other young mutants like himself. A few more minutes passed until finally, they made it to Gohan's hut. Goku set his fish down and stood in front of the door. Wow. That's a nice little place you got there, kid. Bulma stated while looking up at the hut's blue roof. For a house that was more than 12 years old, it still looked pretty good, in her opinion. It definitely suits the humble lifestyle your grandfather preferred to have. Xavier said. Gee. Thanks, guys. Just wait here 1 second. Goku then ran forward and swung open the hut's double doors. He saw the 4-star ball glowing and humming a second time. Listen, he whispered. Grandpa must be trying to talk to me. That's not what it's doing, you goof. Your ball is just reacting to the other two that we have. Bulma said. She then pulled out her 2-star ball and Xavier's 6-star ball, respectively. See? Goku's eyes widened. Wow. They look exactly the same as Grandpa's. Not exactly, Goku. Each Dragon Ball has a different number of stars on them. The one your grandfather gave you has 4. Xavier noted. Goku counted the stars with his fingers and smiled. Yep. There's 7 of them in total, right? Grandpa said that a big dragon named Shenron would come to grant wishes if all of them are gathered together. That's correct. They have the power to do truly amazing things. Xavier replied. And not so great. If a bad person got a hold of these balls, they could really wreak some havoc. Bulma added in dark tone. Havoc? What does that mean? Goku blankly asked. It means that an evil man named Magneto is planning to use the Dragon Balls to take over everything and everyone. He plans to turn every person on Earth into mutants with Shenron's wish-granting powers. Xavier explained. Goku scratched the back of his head in confusion. But aren't we mutants? Shouldn't that be a good thing? Xavier was accepting this kind of response. He moved closer to Goku and rested a hand on his shoulder. You would think so, Goku, but I've come to learn that an overabundance of the X gene will cause mass chaos across the globe. I want people to willingly accept us, not be forced to by means they can't control. The martial artist nodded. Guess that sorta makes sense. Magneto is too consumed by his own hatred for humanity to see reason, unfortunately. I've tried and failed many times to change his mind, but to no avail. Xavier sighed in regret. For that reason, I need you to help me and Ms. Brief stop him, Goku. What do you say? He offered his hand as a gesture of goodwill and friendship. Goku, however, was reluctant to accept this offer. I dunno. This Dragon Ball is all I have left of Grandpa. It'd feel wrong to just give it away. It's for a good cause, kid. We're not planning to wish for something selfish like strawberries or the perfect boyfriend. You can trust us, believe me. Bulma beamed. Right. You weren't planning that at all, Xavier sarcastically grumbled. Besides, this will give you a chance to see the world Gohan used to live in and, inevitably, left behind. There's all sorts of powerful mutants and martial artists you can fight against there. Doesn't that sound promising? It does, yeah, but… Bulma mischievously grinned. There's also a wide assortment of delicious food you can try, Goku. At the mention of food, Goku's mood took a 180 and he hurriedly shook Xavier's hand without delay. The poor professor almost fell out of his wheelchair in surprise. Sounds fun. I guess I can go then. Nice catch, Ms. Brief. I should have known the boy would think more with his stomach than his brain. Xavier mentally sent his regards. Bulma winked and gave him an OK symbol with her fingers. But where do we start looking? The Dragon Balls could be anywhere in the whole world, right? Goku asked. How do you think we got here, silly? Professor Xavier and I used this radar to track your Dragon Ball. It's how we were able to find the Savage Land in the first place. Bulma giggled while gesturing to her technologically advanced device. She pressed the Dragon Radar's button until glowing orange lights appeared on screen. The three they had been clumped together in one single spot. Huh. Neat. The boy whispered. Should we be going then? Yes. Once Bulma brings out her dino caps, we can safely fly back up to the surface and… As he spoke, Carl Lycos jumped out of the bushes and leapt towards Professor Xavier. Bulma screeched in fear. The professor, behind you. Xavier spun around to see his old friend and colleague towering over him. A look of sheer madness was plastered all over his face. Dr. Lycos? He gasped. Lycos then slammed both of his hands against Xavier's temples, causing his mind to experience indescribable pain. Ah. Yes. Scream, Charles. Fill me with your power. I can feel it flowing into every pore of my skin. As life energy was transferred from Xavier's mind to Lycos' body, Goku ran over to the man and kicked him off. Get away from him, you monster. He growled. Xavier fell off his wheelchair from exhaustion and struggled to breath. Bulma quickly attempted to pick him up off the floor. Lycos, on the other hand, showed absolutely no concern. He felt the spot where Goku kicked him in gleeful euphoria. Monster, you say? Yes. That's what I, Carl Lycos, have become. I am nothing more than a fiend spawned by a frozen hell. He sorrowfully proclaimed. He then clutched his aching skull. Yarg. I can bear the pain no more. Goku took a step back and held out his power pole in a defensive manner. What's happening to him, Bulma? I should be asking you that, Einstein. Bulma screamed. Before their very eyes, Carl Lycos' body turned dark green as large leathery wings replaced his arms. His face grew into that of a dinosaurian beak as a long tail extended outward from his backside. The man's own eyes were now blooded with yellow pupils. My body, my face, my very soul, they have been filled, bursting, billowing power. There is both power for good or power for evil flowing inside me, Lycos cried. His transformation was now complete. He outstretched his wings and let out a loud reptilian screech. And, I choose evil. An evil so great, so monumental that only one name in all the annals of literature will contain it. The name of J.R.R. Tolkien's ultimate villain, that dark lord who personified and was truly evil incarnate. The pterodactyl mutate narrowed his eyes and glared at Goku. I will now go by the name of Soren. Ahhh. Great, he's both some scary monster and a nerd. Bulma whimpered in fear. Foolish wench. There is nothing nerdy about the literary works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Soren scowled in burning hatred. For that, you will be the first of my many victims. He took flight and clutched Bulma's shoulders with his large reptilian feet. He then ascended to the skies of Mount Paozu, much to the teenage girl's absolute horror. Ah. Don't just stand there, idiot. Get me down. Bulma screamed. Erg. Pipe down. You pitiful humans absolutely disgust me. Soren winced. He then glared down at the young mutant. You heard your little friend, Son Goku. What's wrong? Are you too afraid to fight a superior being such as myself? Well, if it's a fight you want, Soren, then it's a fight you'll get. Giving one last look at the unconscious Xavier, Goku placed a single hand on the ground and jumped up. He was now eye level with Soren in the air. Impressive leap, boy, but it won't be enough to save your… Our pole, extend. Goku brought out his red staff and extended it all the way back. The immense length of this weapon took Soren by surprise. What the hell? Here. Take this, you mean old bully. The monkey-tailed boy shouted. He swung the power pole and hit Soren directly on the head. The amount of pain he felt was indescribable. Dhh. The reptilian menace let go of Bulma, causing her to fall straight back down to Mount Paozu. She flailed her arms about in fear as Soren descended just as fast. "Help me, Goku. Help." Without much difficulty, Goku safely landed near his hut, shrunk the power pole back to normal size, and caught Bulma. She couldn't stop herself from shivering as the girl stood back up. Thank you. Thank him for what, that's merely a lucky shot, fool." Soren croaked as he quickly recovered from the power pole's blow. "Make no mistake, I will absorb that delicious energy of yours for myself, Son Goku. I'll smash your form to a bloody pulp if I have to." "Well, if you wanted my energy so badly, then all you had to do was ask," Goku said with an absent-minded shrug. He then cupped his hands together and crouched down. "I haven't done this in a while, but here goes. Hope you're not disappointed by it." On the sidelines, Xavier opened his eyes to see the stance that Goku was standing in. He widened his eyes in recognition. He's using the signature technique of Gohan's master, the Turtle Hermit. Could you truly have learned it at such a young age? Hamiya. Soren was too intrigued by what he was seeing to move. A blue ball of energy managed to form in between Goku's hands. Hamiya. It grew slightly bigger and began to spin around. Bulma could only cover her face to stop herself from being blinded by the eponymous Kai blast. "Yes, Son Goku. Give me your energy. It'll only demonstrate my superiority even further." He cackled. Growing impatient, Soren outstretched his sharp talons and prepared to pounce on the boy. "Do it. Give it to me now." "Hiya." Goku unleashed the Kamehameha wave and fired it head-on. The blue Kai blast slammed into Soren's body, causing him to try absorbing it. Unfortunately, it was far too powerful for someone like him to handle. "Yes. This life force will make Soren invincible. You should be proud, mutant. You will be all that I require to rule this savage land and..." "Ha." Goku put a bit more power into the Kamehameha and pushed Soren back a few feet. The human-turned pterodactyl could feel himself slipping. "Wait, no. It's too much. I can feel myself changing back into that sniveling weakling, Karl Lycos." He growled. He was then fully engulfed by the blast and sent flying. "Gra. Nu. Curse you, Son Goku." The Kamehameha wave smashed Soren into a nearby forest and exploded upon impact. Once the smoke cleared, the energy vampire changed back into his human form. "Thank God I'm back to normal." Karl Lycos then collapsed onto his knees and fell unconscious. Goku walked over to the man and frowned. "Too bad. I really don't like to hurt anybody, but he gave me no choice." He whispered to himself. It was a fun fight, though. Xavier managed to just barely crawl back into his wheelchair and reconvene with Goku. "Don't think too ill of him, Goku. Karl Lycos is an old friend of mine," the professor informed. He sympathetically looked upon his colleague. "I wish I knew he could turn into something like that. Maybe I could have helped him more." "Is he a mutant too?" "I'm afraid not. His transformation into Soren is something far different and arguably more dangerous," Xavier stated in uncertainty. He then proudly smiled at the boy. "Which is why I'm proud that you were able to fight him off so well. You're a gifted fighter, my boy." "Aw. It was nothing. I just didn't want to see you or Bulma get hurt." Goku sheepishly chuckled. I'm grateful to you for saving me and all, Goku, but I'm having a little crisis here," Bulma murmured in embarrassment. Small droplets of pee were falling out of her skirt, causing Xavier to look away from disgust. "Oh dear. I knew you should have gone earlier." "Well, excuse me for not wanting to pee in front of two guys. A lady needs her privacy, you know." Bulma scowled as she tried to cover up her incident. Alright. Just bring out one of your capsules and get a fresh change of clothes." Xavier sighed while brushing aside Bulma's worries with a wave of his hand. "We have a long journey ahead of us." The young inventor brought out a container of dino caps and ran into some bushes. "You don't have to tell me twice." Xavier pinched the bridge of his nose in slight annoyance. It brought back memories of how scatterbrained Dr. Brief could be. "There's no question. That girl really is her father's daughter. By the way, Professor, why didn't you stand back up after that Lycos guy knocked you over?" Xavier rubbed the back of his head. He usually didn't like discussing his legs, but for Goku, he'd make an exception. It's because my legs don't work anymore, Goku. It's what people call paralysis. I lost them a long time ago." The Saiyan child blinked a few times in surprise. He didn't even think an injury like that was possible. His wounds had never been permanent before. "Really? How did that happen?" Xavier closed his eyes and let out a regretful sigh. Thinking about the past always brought forth dark thoughts into his mind. "My old friend, Magneto, did it?" "Wait a minute. You mean the same Magneto that's trying to..." "The very same man looking for the Dragon Balls, yes. I'll explain more about it at a later date." We have more important matters to attend to right now. Xavier sternly reminded him. Like getting you out of the savage land, for example. Goku nodded. Alright then. Volcar Lycos, or as his alternate persona called him, Saren, continued to lay unconscious. Goku and Xavier waited for Bulma to finish her business. Afterwards, they'd be able to officially begin their journey to search for the remaining Dragon Balls. Goku would just need to say goodbye to Khazar and Zabu first. Somewhere in the South American country of Peru, 3 shady individuals found themselves looking for a mysterious artifact of untold magical power. Various rumors claim that it had been kept hidden within Machu Picchu, a lost Incan city, so they didn't hesitate to scour its abandoned temples and catacombs for it. After a few hours of constant inspection and hiking, the legendary Dragon Ball they had been searching for was found. This ball, which included only a single red star in its center, rested in front of a large black suit of armor. 6 other armors with bone-tipped spears in their hands seemed to be keeping guard on either side. They, strangely enough, seemed more alien in nature than Incan, but neither of the 3 really paid much attention to notice. All they cared about was grabbing the Dragon Ball and getting the hell out of there. Such thoughts especially applied to the group's leader, Emperor Pilaf. He was strange looking even by the standards of other mutants like himself, having light blue skin, pointed ears, and a small body. He wore a green, red, and black tunic with a white frill wrapped around his neck and blue pants. In the center of his tunic was a red-white emblem with Japanese kanji that roughly translated to fried rice in English. Despite his unintimidating appearance, Pilaf was, by no means, a complete joke. He was a technological genius that could certainly make his goals for world domination come to fruition. He just needed the Dragon Ball's wish-granting abilities to ensure his reign. After that point, no one would look down at him for his mutant heritage or significant lack of muscles mass ever again. Ah. There it is, you two. Pilaf said with a conniving grin on his face. One of his subordinates nervously gulped. He was a mutant ninja that resembled an orange Shiba Inu dog and wore a purple uniform that covered his 2 pointy ears. It's awfully dark in there, sire. The impish emperor scowled at his minion's cowardice. Shut up, Shu. All of them then approached the 1-star ball, including Pilaf's more competent follower, Mai. She was a tall, beautiful Russian woman with long black hair, blue eyes, and red lipstick. She wore a blue trench coat with a red star insignia on each shoulder and a brown belt that kept it tightly secured around her waist. This woman, a former KGB agent for the now-defunct Soviet Union, appeared to be normal physically but still had mutant powers to call her own. Depending on the situation, she could shapeshift into any person, animal, or thing, making her quite successful at both assassination missions and murder in general. However, these powers only came about during rather intense situations. Mai could, unfortunately, be just as goofy and borderline incompetent as her 2 comrades, but she still didn't make it as noticeable. She darted her eyes from left to ear suspiciously as Pilaf grabbed a Dragon Ball. "Come to Emperor Pilaf, my precious." "Yes." He shouted. "Now, I'm ready to finally make my wish." "Wait, sir." Mai interjected in a calm yet stern tone. "Wait, what do you mean wait? I hate to be the one to break it to you, but you can't make a wish with just 1 ball. You have to gather the others as well." Emperor Pilaf gasped. "Others?" "According to legend, there are 7 Dragon Balls, sire. You have to unite all 7 of them before the dragon will appear and grant your wish," she explained. The blue-skinned mutant sighed and dejectedly looked down at his first Dragon Ball. "More searching. But just imagine, dear Emperor, that glorious day when the 7 balls are finally brought together. A burst of energy will light the sky, and in a blazing surge of fiery power, the eternal dragon, Shenron, will rise before you for the sole purpose of granting you a single wish, whatever it may be." Yes. I can see it, Mai. "Well, okay, I guess I can handle a little more searching." Pilaf replied while laughing to himself maniacally. Any wish I want, huh? Then I want to rule the entire world. I'll create an empire so powerful that it will put the United States and Soviet Union to shame. An ambitious wish, Your Majesty, but a rather selfish, short-sighted one, don't you think? They spun around to see a lone figure levitating in front of the temple's entrance. It was a tall, muscular man wearing red-purple armor with matching boots, gloves, and a long cape that was draped behind his back. A helmet of the same color concealed his face in shadows and only made 2 white, ominously glowing eyes visible to the Pilaf gang. He crossed his arms while floating in midair, seemingly unperturbed by Pilaf's hostile facial expressions. "Who the heck are you?" the imp cried. "I have gone by many names, Pilaf, but only one is worthy enough to represent the power and authority I have come to possess," the man replied. "You may call me Magneto." Pilaf broke out into a fit of uncontrollable laughter. Mai and Shu were far too on edge by Magneto's presence to join in. "PFFT. Ha ha ha. I'm sorry, but what kind of stupid name is that, and why would you even bother calling yourself that in the first place? Magneto said nothing in reply. He simply outstretched his arm and made all 6 suits of armor point their spears at the 3. They were now surrounded on all sides, much to their immense confusion and fear. Does that answer your question? How did you? The mysterious mutant levitated closer to the Pilaf gang and looked down upon them. Believe it or not, we actually have quite a few things in common, my little blue friend. I, the supreme master of magnetism, am a mutant like yourself, have amassed a group of followers loyal to my cause, and… He narrowed his eyes and pointed at the 1-star ball. Also have an interest in using the Dragon Balls to make my own wish come true. And what wish, may I ask, would that be? Mai asked. To the trio's surprise, Magneto's facial expressions, although concealed, became a bit more somber and remorseful. For countless centuries, our kind has been persecuted, slaughtered, and wrongfully ostracized by those foolish Homo sapiens that dare to call themselves human beings. They fear our gift so much that mutant kind itself is considered a disease to them, yet, in actuality, they are the virus preventing the next stage in human evolution from taking place. He explained in anger. That is why I wish to simply speed up the process a bit. By doing what? Shu almost regretted to inquire. Once I collect all 7 Dragon Balls, I will wish for every person on the planet to become a mutant. There will be no need for any more anti-mutant sentiment if the whole entire world is populated by us and only us. Magneto revealed with fully narrowed eyes. He then sighed, thinking back to the days spent with his best friend and fellow mutant Professor Charles Xavier. He hoped that Charles would join his cause one day. I may have supported coexistence between our species at one point, but over time, I've come to realize that this is the only true solution to this problem. The magnetic mutant muttered. And that is why I require the use of your dragon radar, Pilaf. Please think carefully about what I've explained to you. The Emperor tightened his lips. Although he initially thought the man was insane, his talk of persecution and prejudice ended up hitting far too close to home. His family may have been wealthy, but that didn't make the pure hatred directed towards his blue impish appearance any less hurtful. It took him years just to get over that feeling. Are you really going through with this, sire? This Magneto guy seems pretty unhinged. Shu warned. Mai scoffed in annoyance. TCH. What other choice do we have, Shu? We'll probably get stabbed with these spears or worse if his offer is declined. Silence, you blockheads. I'm thinking. Pilaf looked from the 1-star ball to Magneto in confusion. He did this same action for a few seconds before grimacing and breaking out into a cold sweat. What's in it for me or us? Well, if my plans succeed and the planet becomes fully populated by mutants, then you will surely gain quite a reputation for contributing to the survival of our race. You might even amass your own empire, in fact. My own empire, Pilaf whispered to himself in delight. It wouldn't exactly give him much control over the entire world, but in the end, it was better than nothing. He then begrudgingly handed over the Dragon Ball to Magneto and slumped his shoulders. Fine, you win. We'll help you increase the amount of mutants or whatever. The master of magnetism tightly clutched the 1-star ball in his hand and smiled. Your willingness to help is much appreciated, Pilaf. He then swiped his arm and expertly moved the 6 armors back into place. This caused Shu, Mai, and Pilaf to clutch their knees in sudden relief. Let us be off then, my mutant sister and brothers. The 3 gave each other nervous looks before exiting the temple and following Magneto's lead. A large mountain range that surrounded Machu Picchu could be seen nearby. Shu scratched the back of his head. I think I parked our airship somewhere over there. Let me just. No need. Magneto floated a bit higher in the air and outstretched both of his arms. With some additional effort, the powerful mutant magnetically grabbed a hold of Pilaf's flying base and picked it up. He then clenched his hand and slowly but surely dropped it right in front of them. To say that Shu's mind was blown would be a huge understatement. He could barely stop his jaw from dropping to the floor. I think I just peed a little. Mai pinched the bridge of her nose and shook her head. Do it near a tree this time, please. Right as they were about to board the flying base, Magneto's aforementioned followers appeared. They comprised of a blue-skinned woman with short red hair and yellow eyes, a beastly-looking man with long, metallic claws and sharp teeth, and a few more after that. Their leader proudly gestured to them in front of his 3 new allies and, more likely than not, pawns. Welcome to the Brotherhood of Mutants. Back at the Savage Land. Azar, once known as Kevin Plunder, was currently attempting to take down a Tyrannosaurus Rex all by himself. He managed to climb up the dinosaur's back and stab at its pink eyes with a large hunting knife. The creature, of course, didn't take too kindly to this action and tried to toss him off, but to no avail. The self-proclaimed Lord of the Jungle was simply too strong for it. However, his endurance was another story. I wish Zaburar Tonga was here. I could really use some help against this beast. In that exact moment, his beloved saber-toothed tiger, Zabu, leapt out of some bushes and joined the battle. He pounced on the T-Rex and took a large bite out of its scaly flesh. "Brio. Great timing as always, old friend," Khazar shouted. He then took advantage of the dinosaur's pain and stabbed it straight in the head. Its brain was pierced as a result, causing the reptilian beast to collapse onto the ground and fall dead. Khazar brushed his long, blonde locks backward and took a deep breath. "That could have gone better," he grumbled while putting his knife back in its holster. "At least the fall people will be eating well tonight. Unless that little glutton, Goku, somehow gets his hands on it." He laughed at the thought of his monkey-tailed friend and smiled. This caused Zabu to brush up against his leg and gesture to the part of the jungle he just came from. "Huh? What's the matter, Zabu?" Khazar asked. "Does this have something to do with Goku?" The prehistoric tiger nodded his head. "Grrr. Growl." The wild man narrowed his eyes in newfound concern. "I see. Well, hopefully that kid isn't in some kind of trouble," he said. "Lead the way, Zabu old buddy." "Brarg." The two of them then ran towards Mount Paozu as fast as they could. During their short run back there, Goku, Professor Xavier and Bulma were preparing to board a hovercraft back to the surface. Thankfully, once the young heiress did her business and had a quick change of clothes, there wouldn't be any more emergencies to worry about for the time being. Although, Lyco's unconscious body still brought up some obvious concerns. "So, what's going to happen to this Lyco's guy? We can't just leave him here," Goku pointed out. Bulma crossed her arms and huffed. She was now wearing a blue jacket and pants that included the word Bulma on each shoulder. "HMPH. Why shouldn't we? There's a chance he might wake up and try to turn into that scary-looking monster again. And I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather not be in the same place as him if or when that happens again." "Is it cause you don't want to pee your pants again?" Goku asked. "I said not to talk about that, you rude little boy," Bulma shrieked, causing the young martial artist to cover his ears. Now, Ms. Brief. There's no need to yell," Xavier advised. Dr. Lyco's transformation was initiated by the absorption of mutant energy, so due to the power of Goku's Kamehameha wave, I hypothesize that he'll be burnt out for quite some time. Lyco's, or more specifically, Soren, reached the maximum amount of power he could absorb, I believe. Goku nodded. "Ah, okay. So, that's why he conked out like that. Well, scary pterodactyl or not, I still want to get out of here and never come back to the savage land Aga." Bulma's comment was interrupted by the sudden arrival of Khazar and Zabu. Seeing the man's bare chest and large muscles caused the teenage girl to be struck dumb with pure lust. On second thought, maybe this place isn't too bad, after all. She giggled. Goku, ignoring Bulma's weird personality shift, waved at his old friend and grinned. "Hey, Khazar. Looks like Zabu got you here just in time, huh?" The jungle man quirked a brow. "Got me here just in time for what, young friend?" It was then that Dr. Brief's daughter scooched extra close to Khazar and wrapped her hands around his arm. Even Zabu didn't know how to react to this gesture. "Just in time to meet me, of course. I'm Goku's new friend, Bulma," she said suggestively. "Are you seeing anyone, handsome? I could be the Jane to your Tarzan if you know what I mean." Goku darted his eyes from Bulma to Khazar in confusion. "But his name's Khazar, though." "It's a reference, kid. You still have a lot left to learn about the outside world," Bulma grimaced. "And you have a lot left to learn about something called personal space, miss." Khazar then wrenched his arm free from Bulma's, causing her to whine in disappointment. "Now, who are you people, really? And what business do you have with Goku?" "Allow me to explain, Khazar," Professor Xavier replied as he wheeled himself into view. "I am an old friend of Goku's late grandfather, Son Gohan, and a prize geneticist from Westchester County, New York. I have recently identified him as a mutant, much like myself, and hope to help the boy unlock his full potential." Khazar massaged his chin and thought. "A mutant, Makes sense. I always did wonder why he was born with a monkey tail." "I always wondered that myself, so you're not alone." Goku chuckled. "But even so, what good would bringing him to New York do? Goku's managed to train and grow strong just fine here," he exclaimed. "He's done a great deal of good for the Savage Lands people, so it'd be unfair to me, Zabu, and the others to take him away without good reason." Bulma pulled out her dragon radar and one of the Dragon Balls. "It is for a good reason, though, Khazar. There are some bad people up on the surface who want to use Goku's Dragon Ball and 6 others to transform everyone on the entire planet into mutants." She then frowned at him in a more serious manner. "And that likely includes the Savage Land too." His eyes widened from shock. He might not have had that much knowledge about mutants and their kind, but the event that Bulma just described would, undoubtedly, be pure chaos. It'd lead to the forceful mutation of himself and other unsuspecting people he knew. That's complete madness. If that orange ball is indeed capable of such power, then Khazar took out his knife and brandished it. Wouldn't it be best to destroy it right here and now? Before whatever maniac who's planning this succeeds in getting what they want. Goku shook his head. He'd be completely miserable if anything happened to his grandfather's Dragon Ball. No, you can't do that, Khazar. That's all I have left of my grandpa, remember? He looked down at the floor in shame and put away his knife. You're right. That was a lapse of judgment on my part. It was then that the man realized how righteous Professor Xavier and, to a lesser extent, Bulma's intentions were. There were no longer any more excuses he could come up with to deny Goku's departure. It would just be difficult to accept that one of his oldest friends and allies would be leaving him behind. He knelt down and rested a hand on Goku's shoulder. Tell me, young warrior. Do you really wish to leave the savage land behind? The boy, although reluctant in certain aspects, was adamant about his decision. I mean, I kinda don't want to leave you in Zabu, but there's a whole nother world to see out there. And my grandpa came from it, so it must not be too bad, right? Goku explained the reasoning behind his choice to leave. Plus, I bet there's some pretty strong guys to fight up on the surface. Don't forget the food too. Bulma added. This caused Goku to nod his head even more enthusiastically. Yeah, and a bunch of new food to eat. I'm getting excited just thinking about it. Khazar bent his head back and started laughing in amusement. Ahaha. Only you could be thinking with your stomach at a time like this, my friend. Some things never change, do they? Guess not. The two friends then spent a moment or two laughing, reminiscing about old times. Those adventures were now a thing of the past, but Goku would always hold them close to his heart, even entire worlds away. Khazar then grabbed a hold of Goku's hand and shook it as a sign of respect. Then I guess this is goodbye, son Goku. You'll always be welcome in the savage land, so please feel free to come visit at any time. You bet, Khazar. Hope it won't be too long. Goku beamed. As he tried to walk away, Asadin Zabu lightly tugged part of the boy's guy with his mouth. This made the spiky-haired boy a little sad himself. Aw, don't be like that, Zabu. I won't be gone forever, so we'll see each other again soon, buddy. I promise. He cooed while hugging parts of the tiger's orange fur. Who knows? I might be even stronger than I am now. The tiger then pounced on top of Goku and proceeded to excessively lick his face. Row. Prrrrrr. Hey. Stop that. I'll miss you too. After ridding himself of saber-toothed tiger slobber, Bulma used a dino cap to bring out her yellow hovercraft once more. The three were now officially ready to depart from the savage land. By the way, Khazar, I would like to you for a favor, Professor Xavier stated matter-of-factly. What kind of favor? The bold researcher pointed over to Carlyco's still unconscious form. That man is an old friend of mine named Dr. Carlycos. He has a strange infliction that causes him to transform into a pterodactyl-like monster called Soren, but only after coming in contact with mutant powers. The professor proclaimed in dismay. Despite this disease, he is a good man who could provide medical aid and support for your people. All I ask is that you take care of him for the time being. At least for as long as he decides to remain in the savage land. Khazar was a little more than disturbed by this information, but given the strain and sorrow laced in Lyco's expression, it wouldn't be right to just leave him alone like that. The savage land is filled with all sorts of danger, so a doctor's services would be greatly appreciated. I'll bring him to my friend Tonga's village and see what I can do. Please make certain nothing bad happens to Goku in return. You have my word on that, Mr. Plunder. No harm will come to the boy with me as his teacher and guardian. Xavier assured him. Khazar looked startled by the casual utterance of his original birth name. How did you? The telepath can access information in quite a number of ways, Lord of the Savage Land. Professor Xavier replied telepathically. The blonde-haired warrior massaged his aching forehead and directed Bulma to where she needed to fly to. There's a series of tunnels over yonder. Just go through there and you should reach the surface in a number of hours. Bulma gave him an appreciative thumbs up. Gotcha. Thanks for the heads up. With Goku and Professor Xavier now strapped in, the young girl took flight and officially departed from the savage land. She also spared a few more unsavory thoughts about Khazar's body before leaving. Please do keep your mind out of the gutter, Ms. Brief. There's a child on board. Bulma scowled at the sound of Xavier's voice inside her head. Ugh. Let a girl express her secret desires in peace, Professor. Desires? What's she talking about now, Professor? Goku asked obliviously. Don't worry too much about it. Even teenage hormones confused me sometimes. Xavier muttered. Bulma, hearing every word they said, tightly gripped the steering wheel and kept flying. They were nothing but a small speck in the sunlight as they left the savage land and moved on to the next part of their adventure. Once they were gone, Kaz-R picked up Carlyco's unconscious body and prepared to carry him over to the Fall people. The brown-haired doctor, in spite of his frail condition, opened one of his eyes to glance up at the yellow hovercraft. He thought of the young boy who managed to stop Soren's rampage and smiled. "Thank you, Son Goku." A few hours later at Westchester County, New York, age 749, year 1996. The trip back to New York was rather long and tedious, but eventually, Goku, Professor Xavier, and Bulma reached their destination. She landed her hovercraft in front of the X-Mansion and yawned. "Well, boys, we're here. It's good to finally be somewhere normal for a change." The blue-haired girl sighed in relief. "Thank the Lord that dinosaurs aren't still alive outside the savage land." Goku looked perplexed by this information. "Wait, what? You don't have dinosaurs in New York or whatever this place is?" "Afraid not. Dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years," Professor Xavier informed. "It's why the savage land is such an anomaly compared to the rest of the world." The boy counted on his fingers, trying to figure out how big of a number millions would be. "Wow. That's a really long time. Any reason why things are like that?" "Even I don't know the exact answer to that question. Your home's origins are a mystery that many scientists have tried and failed to solve countless times over." "That's kinda odd," Goku muttered. "Indeed it is," Xavier agreed. "But enough about that. Let's take a look at the mansion. It'll be your new home for the foreseeable future." "Mansion?" The three piled out of the hovercraft and walked outside. Goku now had the opportunity to get a good hard look at Professor Xavier's estate. It proved to be much bigger and fancier than he initially anticipated. "Holy cow. This place is gigantic." "That's pretty close to what my first reaction was, kid." Bulma chuckled. She then placed her hovercraft back into its respective dino cap and put it away. "I inherited this property from my family many years ago, Goku. Although it once used to be my childhood home, I have decided to turn into a school called the Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters." Xavier proclaimed with a proud, hopeful smile on his face. "You and, hopefully, other young mutants around your age will study here as the school's first students." Goku looked a little disinterested in that part of their discussion. He, as usual, was looking forward to training more than studying. "Huh. I've never really went to school before, Professor. Won't this all be a little boring?" Bulma snorted. "It's school, Goku. Of course it will be." Professor Xavier glared at her before clearing his throat and patting Goku on the shoulder. "Truth be told, many of the most powerful martial artists have managed to strengthen their mind, body, and spirit simultaneously. Innermost balance is the key to becoming a successful fighter, my boy," the wheelchair-bound researcher said. "I'm not expecting you to become a genius overnight, but I at least want you to obtain basic reading and writing skills. Does that sound fair?" The monkey-tailed boy couldn't help but agree with what Xavier told him. Everything he just mentioned sounded like the type of person his grandfather was and then some. "Yeah. When you put it like that, I guess it doesn't sound too bad. Plus, most of your education will be centered around embracing your mutant abilities and identity. And to do that, you must spend some time training in the mansion's danger room." The name of this room caught Goku's attention almost immediately. His tail was even swishing about like a curious, excited puppy. "Danger room? What's that?" "It's something my dad cooked up back in the day. Considering how strong you are, you're definitely gonna get a kick out of it," Bulma playfully remarked. She then winked at him and held the door open for Professor Xavier. After he wheeled himself in, he quickly led her and Goku to the mansion's west wing. There, a metal door labeled Danger Room in bold red letters could be seen. "Dad always was a little too on the nose with these things," Bulma quipped. Xavier ignored her and proceeded with his own, more detailed explanation. "Now listen closely, Goku. The Danger Room, as the name so aptly implies, is dangerous. I'll be testing your strength, speed, and endurance via its many traps and pre-installed weaponry. This will show me if you're ready to fight Magneto or any other mutant that may pose a substantial threat to the world." Goku took a minute to process this description before nodding in understanding. "Sounds good to me, Professor. How do I start?" "Just enter that door and wait for my instructions. Ms. Brief and I will be monitoring your progress through the control room located above it." As instructed, the boy stood in front of the entrance, causing it to automatically open in the form of an X. He blinked a few times in surprise before taking a deep breath and entering the danger room. The door then sealed shut behind him. Afterwards, Professor Xavier and Bulma went up a ramp leading to the control room. It was a circular laboratory built into the danger room ceiling that included various computer monitors and control panels. It also had large glass windows that allowed Xavier to see exactly what was going on down below. The symbol for Capsule Corporation could be seen on a few of the computers, much to Bulma's clear lack of surprise. "I'm guessing Dad couldn't help but trademark his technology, huh?" Xavier shrugged. I simply agreed to give credit where credit was due. He looked down to see an awestruck Goku curiously titling his head from side to side. Although it was only a large silver dome at the moment, the boy was impressed by its advanced technology, nonetheless. Xavier admired the boy's innocence, but a part of him felt concerned by it. He wondered how long it would take for Magneto or someone equally dangerous to quash that childlike naivety forever. "Are you ready, Goku?" he asked through the control room's intercom. "I think so." "Good. Then let us begin," Xavier replied. "Activate the laser rifles, Bulma." "Laser rifles? Already?" Goku's already proven himself against Soren, so a few lasers may as well be child's play for him. "I simply wish to test his maneuverability and speed against multiple opponents, rather than just one." Bulma still felt a little concerned for Goku's safety, but in the end, she complied with Xavier's orders and activated the first obstacle. "If you say so, Professor." She typed a few commands into the control panel, bringing out guns that snaked their way out of the walls and ceiling. They all fired red lasers at Goku, much to the boy's chagrin. "Yikes." Goku yelped. "They're all over the place." Taking note of the lasers' movements, Goku somersaulted and flipped between them at faster than average speeds. They tried to shoot at him before his feet even hit the ground, but he was simply moving too fast. He even managed to hide behind one rifle and trick another into destroying it. He missed me. He kept dodging each laser with ease until, finally, there wasn't anything left to fire at him. They were either damaged beyond repair or ran out of energy. "Well, that was pretty fun." Goku chuckled. His two friends were both greatly impressed by the mutant martial artist's performance. Xavier, in particular, seemed pleased by how fast Goku managed to both think and move in combat. Perhaps he could have moved just a tiny bit faster, but it wasn't a bad first attempt. "Not bad at all," he murmured. "Now, let's see if his strength is just as promising." But the simple push of a button, a part of the ceiling descended onto Goku's body and attempted to crush him. "Look alive, Goku. The next part of your training is about to begin," Xavier advised with caution. "There won't be any time to mess around with this one." Goku, surprised by this obstacle, lifted up his arms and held the metallic press back as much as possible. Erg. So heavy. He clenched his teeth and, with immense difficulty, kept holding it in the air. His muscles were practically screaming in pain, but any resistance would result in his imminent death. Bulma could only watch this scene in horror. "Professor Xavier, isn't this a little extreme? Goku's only 12 years old, for crying out loud. Any normal kid would have been flattened by now." Even Xavier himself didn't expect the boy to be in so much pain. Goku was still clearly determined to keep going, however, so he didn't have any reason to end the session. "Yes, but Goku isn't a normal boy. He's a mutant and physically powerful one at that," he noted. "Let's wait and see what he does, Bulma. Your concern is warranted, of course, but I don't think Goku feels that same way about this situation." The blue-haired girl leaned closer to the window so she could keep a proper eye on Goku. Little by little, the young warrior managed to lift the hydraulic press further away from his head. He went from crouching down on his knees to standing up completely straight and tall in mere minutes. "Erg. Come on. I can do this. Keep going, Goku. All you need to do is push this press back into the ceiling, and then, you'll be done. Your endurance is already more than impressive," Xavier telepathically cheered. "It's your superhuman strength that you need to show off now." "Easier said than done, Professor. I'm trying." Goku groaned. Just as it seemed like Goku was about to buckle under pressure and give up, a wide aura of energy surrounded him. This energy enhanced his strength significantly, giving him the boost necessary to push the press all the way back into the danger room ceiling. Hi-ya! The press powerfully smashed into the ceiling, causing the control room's panels to short-circuit and emit small sparks of electricity. Bulma had to leap out of her chair to stop herself from getting electrocuted or worse. Gee, good thing that didn't touch my hair," she stammered in nervousness. Back in the danger room, Goku took short, ragged breaths with a small grin on his face. He looked completely exhausted. "Did you see that, Professor?" I did it." The boy then dropped down and fell unconscious. "Goku?" Both Professor Xavier and Bulma cried in unison. They deactivated the control room's current functions and went straight down to the danger room to check on Goku. To their immense relief, the boy was only snoring away in a deep, yet peaceful sleep. Perhaps I did go a little too far with that last obstacle." Bulma crouched down and gently picked the boy up in her arms. A little bit of drool trickled out of his mouth, but she tried her best to ignore it and not wince from disgust. "You think if any more time passed, Goku could have been turned into a monkey-tailed pancake?" Xavier slightly bowed his head in shame. "I realize that, yes. That was short-sighted on my part and I apologize," he said. But even in spite of that possibility, Goku still prevailed and pushed the hydraulic press back. His strength, I now realize, is more than just impressive. It's extraordinary. Don't you mean extraordinary? The professor deadpanned and didn't laugh along with her. Oh, lighten up. It was a clever play on words. Bulma huffed. Though, all jokes aside, Goku's a pretty tough kid. Can you imagine how strong he'll be when he's older? That Magneto jerk wouldn't even know what hit him. Such a possibility is precisely why I'm glad I found him before Magneto did. Goku might be the key to preventing his cataclysmic wish from coming true. Xavier assumed. However, at the same time, I know that Goku alone won't be enough. He'll need peers his own age to train and fight with. And that's where your X-Men idea comes in, right? Bulma asked. Exactly. Looks like Goku's going to be their fearless leader then. Wonder how that's going to pan out. Bulma giggled at such an idea. No, Xavier shook his head. After taking some time to think about Goku's strengths and past experiences, I don't believe he has the intelligence necessary to lead an entire team. Maybe lead certain missions here or there, but not the X-Men in its entirety. He's far too immature, naive, and kind-hearted for that position. The professor's honesty was brutal, yet hard to argue against. Fair point. Leaders do always have to make the toughest decisions, whether they be good or bad. I don't think Goku could even decide what he'd want to eat for dinner, honestly. Bulma joked, but in a semi-serious manner. Even back in the Savage Land, as much as I hate to think about it, Khazar was considered Lord of the Jungle, while Goku was just his close ally and friend, I guess. Correct? Goku has lived most of his childhood alone, so it wouldn't be wrong to assume that he values independence rather than staying in one place. Xavier stated matter-of-factly. It's far from my intention to keep Goku cooped up in this mansion, but he will, at one point, need to learn how to work as a team and family. Bulma glanced at Goku's sleeping form and smiled. I think the poor kid needs something like that. I can't even imagine how lonely he must have been when his grandpa died. Lonely are the hunted, Ms. Brief. All sorts of young mutants have felt alone and isolated in this world. He then sympathetically touched Goku's head and brushed away some of his black bangs. And by bringing these mutants together as X-Men, I hope to create a world where they'll never have to feel alone again. The paraplegic man took some time to think about this more ideal, utopic society before casting it aside. There was still a whole lot more work to do before such a peaceful dream could become reality. For now, though, let's give Goku some time to rest and recover from those injuries. I'll have my colleague, Moira McTaggart, take a look at him once she comes over. Alright then. Bulma held Goku securely in her arms as she and Professor Xavier walked back to the living room in relative silence. So, what is Dr. McTaggart doing nowadays? I haven't seen her since she came to visit Capsule Corporation a few years ago. Xavier lightly grinned with a twinge of sadness on his face. It was difficult to talk about Moira, given their past history together. She's currently running a mutant research center on Muir Island, Scotland. She also, however, agreed to be employed as this mansion's housekeeper not too long ago. He recalled. So, she'll be providing her own input and assistance on certain affairs my X-Men may deal with. Nice to know. It'll be good seeing her again. Bulma beamed. Yes. It will be, Xavier muttered to himself in thought. I'm sure she'll be quite impressed by your dragon radar as well. And the 3 Dragon Balls we currently have in our possession, now that I think about it. Bulma cockily wiggled her eyebrows. You think so? Cause I don't mean to brag or anything, but not just any typical Japanese girl could pull off a technological masterpiece like this baby. Yes. Your intellect knows no bounds, Ms. Brief. Xavier sarcastically replied. They then placed Goku on the couch, wrapped a blanket around him, and waited for him to fully recuperate. After he'd get some much-deserved rest, Professor Xavier would move on to the next step of their expedition. And that step would involve locating new mutants through the use of Cerebro. The first of this group would be Jean Elaine Grey, a young telepath that he, in his humble opinion, would get along with Goku rather easily. They, after all, have both experienced loss at similar stages in their young lives. The end.